It's 5:30, so welcome to the Thursday, February 19th, 2026 regular meeting of the Boulder City Council. I will go ahead and call us to order. Alicia, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. We'll start our roll call for tonight's with Councilmember Adams,
Present.
Benjamin,
Present.
Mayor Brockett,
Present?
Councilmember Kaplan,
Present.
Marquis,
Here.
Shuhart,
Here.
Spear,
Here.
Wallach,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Here.
Mayor, we have our quorum.
Thanks so much. All right, let's go to open comment. And Alicia, can you go over the public participation guidelines, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your participation at tonight's City Council meeting. We ask that you abide by the rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code, which includes participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by. Individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Only audio testimony is permitted during open comment. No attendee shall disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any council meeting in a manner that obstructs the business of the meeting. This also includes failing to obey any lawful order of the presiding officer to leave the meeting room or refrain from addressing the council. All remarks and testimonies shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. And lastly, obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, or other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for that, Alicia. All right, so I'm going to read the first three names. The people are going to be speaking. Everyone gets 2 minutes. I am strict about the time and about the rules. That doesn't mean we don't like you. We just do follow our rules closely. Our first three speakers are Frank Reinhardt in person, Christine Breskel in person, and then Laura Gonzalez virtually.
Thank you. Hello, City Council. My name is Frank Reinhardt, and I care so much about the South Boulder Rec Center that I'm missing my basketball practice just to be here. When I was thinking about exactly what I wanted to say about the South Boulder Rec, I realized that the best thing is probably the most simple. And here it is. This is all about our pool. Our pool is the reasons thousands of people are signing the Rec Center petition. Our pool is the reasons thousands of people our pool is the reasons we're coming to these meetings. Our pool is the reasons our friend and our little brothers and sisters are decorating flowers. But when I say this is all about our pool, I'm not talking about the total number of lap lanes in the city of Boulder. No, I'm talking about the specific location, a pool we've had for 52 years, and a pool that is used by people of all ages. A pool that is walkable for kids and senior citizens. A pool that is the heart of the South Boulder Rec Center. But this isn't surprising because a lap pool is the heart of every rec center. That's because without a pool, you don't have a rec center. Instead, you have a fitness center or an arena or a teen center, or worst of all, you might have a field house. And we definitely don't want a field house. Now, I may only be 14, but I've learned about democracy 3 separate times in school, and I know that each of you is elected to represent us. So please, represent us. And that means not letting Parks and Recs Department or anyone else take away our lap pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Christine Breskel and then Laura Gonzalez and Lynn Siegel virtually.
Hi, I'm Christine Breskel speaking about the South Boulder Rec Center petition. This isn't a niche petition. To the contrary, our signers include former members of City Council and current members of the BVSD School Board. So why would BVSD school board members sign our petition asking to keep a lap pool in the South Boulder Rec Center? Well, this is an easy question if you know any members of the school board. It's because they care about kids and what's best for kids. And they truly do. And it's obvious that it's best for kids at all 5 BVSD schools in Table Mesa to have a pool that's walking distance from where they live or go to school. And this is, of course, true for Fairview swimmers, but it's also true for high schoolers across the district. It's obviously best for them to practice at the pools that are closest to their schools. This also isn't just a South Boulder petition. People of North Boulder are heavy signers, as are those in 80303 and 302. And the number of signatures and our ranks slowly grows each day because we have teams of volunteers going door to door, block by block, having in-person conversations. We're building awareness and relationships. And I can tell you, as one of those volunteers, I can attest to the two constant refrains we hear. One, Boulder residents are upset that replacing the South Boulder Rec Center with a no pool facility is even on the table. Indeed, it is shocking that other projects like the civic area or park projects are higher priorities than keeping a pool in a community rec center, particularly a rec center that doesn't need to be wholesale replaced. And I ask you, please question that conclusion. I mean, that it does need to be replaced. The second thing is people definitely don't want the outdoor Harlow Platts field with the volleyball courts and soccer field. It's what's all right next to the current field. And right now, it's a free to use, open to the public for, it's great, especially for young kids, great, to be converted into an outdoor field.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony.
Or to be converted.
Oh, all right. Our next speakers are Laura Gonzalez and Lynn Siegel virtually, and then Mary Sneewaz in person.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon to Frank, Christine, and every person that is here today and has been here in the last few weeks advocating for a pool and a rec center that provides physical, mental, and emotional well-being to the tax-paying community. Please demand to divest the $38 million a year that the Boulder City invests in genocide, murdering children, the age of what we're trying to protect here, raping children and women, and also ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people and committing apartheid in the West Bank. So please divest those $38 million a year and invest it here in our community where we pay our taxes to keep our children healthy. The illegal Zionists, illegal occupation are planning a final extermination project to get rid of all Gazawis in March during Ramadan, a sacred Muslim holiday. That is why Netanyahu was here, the so-called Board of Peace. It wasn't just to enroll the board, but to use the excuse to forcefully disarm the legal resistance group of Hamas and other legal armed resistance groups that are protected under international law in Palestine to constantly bombard innocent people. Up to now, 591 people have been murdered and 1,578 injured after the so-called ceasefire that Tara Weiner celebrated in October. They have started in the north of Gaza in the Jabalia camp. Yes, that's right. You celebrated that, Tara. You remember that you asked us why we were not celebrating enough? Because the genocide never stopped, and you are on the record saying that. And you will never be able to say that you didn't know. Your children and grandchildren will know that you knew that that genocide happened and that you continue to invest in it. That will be your legacy. They have started in the north of Gaza in the Jabalia camp. They have invited 8,000 Indonesian troops to come outside of Gaza and are inviting more than 20,000 foreigners to protect the Jewish supremacist forces that are committing a genocide instead of protecting the innocent children, women, and men, because Zionism is Jewish supremacy, period. And let's stop calling it Zionism. It's Jewish supremacy because words matter, and we got to call it what it is, just like we call white supremacy here in the United States. Zionism started as...
Up. Our next speaker is Lynn Siegel, and then Mary Sneewaz, and then Rahi Abujam Mainali in person as well.
Mayor, I do not see Lynn online tonight.
All right, let's go to Mary in person then.
Hello, thank you for your service. My name is Mary Sneewaz, and I'm a 23-year resident of Boulder. My family of 6 has used all of the rec centers extensively for those years. In fact, my sons are at Fairview swim practice right now at South. I, like many in this room, believe all our rec centers are valuable assets that we should maintain and preserve. The city's own 2022 master plan states as a top priority, taking care of what we have with regard to facilities. I'm here to challenge the narrative that Boulder Parks and Recs and Facilities has been pushing for years, that the South Boulder Rec Center is end of life, past the inflection point, has structural and foundation problems, and the like. Just because something is said over and over doesn't make it true. We've seen the 2025 engineering report. South does not have structural or foundation problems that necessitate replacement. Indeed, the report states, and this is a quote, regular maintenance must continue to ensure the structure remains intact and functional. The visual evaluation did not find any areas of major concern relating to the structure. No issue at South is so great that the entire building must be torn down. That narrative is being used in order to justify spending all the $53 million at East Boulder Community Center so that Boulder Parks and Rec can consolidate aquatic services at East and eliminate the pool at South. You, as our elected representatives, have the power and the responsibility to pursue the priorities of us residents, not the priorities of Boulder Parks and Rec. The lab pool and gym are already in existence. We're not asking for new services. Residents have voted for CCRS tax extensions in 21 and into 2025 that explicitly state recreation center renovations and replacements. Yet when it comes to South Boulder Rec Center, Boulder Parks and Rec continues to say it will depend on what the voters will pay for. Well, voters have voted for rec centers time and again. And our petition with over 3,000 signatures is yet another show of voter demand to keep the South Boulder Rec Center pool and gym. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to Rai Abujan Mainali in person, then Samantha Doucette virtually, and Elizabeth Rasmussen in person.
Hi, my name is Rahi, and I'm a third grader at Bear Creek in South Boulder, and I really enjoy swimming. I like to watch the Olympics with my parents sometimes, the very little TV time I'm allowed, and I find it inspiring to see all the athletes be so good at what they do. I especially love watching the Summer Olympics because of the swimming and gymnastics competitions. I'm pretty good at gymnastics, but I want to get better at my swimming. We may not all be Olympians, but it feels good to be really good at something. My mom and dad teach a lot of life stuff. Be kind, eat your vegetables, and also speak up for yourself. And I'm here not just to speak up for myself, but also for other kids like me. My parents also say practice makes progress. Not perfect, but progress. Now, for me to make progress in my swimming, it helps to have a pool nearby where I can practice my swimming. A pool that someday I can walk to myself, independently. We are so lucky that the South Boulder Rec Pool is open again. Thank you for that. So why take it away? It makes no sense to take away what we already have. An amazing pool. All I'm saying is, do I really have to bug my mom and dad to drive me all the way to another rec center pool to swim just because South Boulder doesn't have one? Please, please save our pool. All of us kids love it and need it. Thank you for all that you do for the city, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. And I'll mostly ask people not to applaud, but that was amazing. Great job, Rai. Now we go to Samantha Doucette virtually, then Elizabeth Rasmussen and Katie Reed in person.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but you have an echo.
Okay, is it still there? Okay. I'm not sure how to get the echo to go away.
You may have two devices on. We can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Samantha Doucette. I am a Boulder resident along with my dog, Ollie. I love our open space and I want to be able to use it safely, as I know many others do. I want to be very clear. I support Boulder's Voice in Sight program. I am not here to take away anything from responsible dog owners. As Boulder grows, I'm concerned the program is being taken advantage of. There have not been updates or progress monitoring on this program since 2018. I have a fearful dog adopted from the Boulder Valley Humane Society, along with other dogs being brought in from surrounding states being adopted out. My dog is always leashed. I plan our routes carefully. I step aside for others and verbally advocate for him. He has just as much right to be on our public trails as much as any off-leash dog. And yet we have been rushed multiple times by off-leash dogs. Each time I hear, my dog has a tag or they're friendly. But many dogs and many people do not want to be approached by unfamiliar dogs. Instead of enjoying our trails, I'm managing risk. This isn't what shared public space should feel like. I'm not asking to end the program, I'm asking to strengthen it. I propose these enhancements to the program. A standardized in-person evaluation of the dog with a clear checklist, either through volunteers or paid by raising the tag prices, and/or an approved training course pathway with certification from a local trainer stating completion, and adding a clearly defined rule that tag dogs must not approach leashed dogs, people, or wildlife without explicit permission, or at the bare minimum, conducting an updated interim status report. The full proposal was emailed over to all of you. Strong regulation does not threaten access, it preserves it. I want Boulder to remain a place where off-leash recreation and safety coexist, where other owners are not absorbing all the risk. All dogs deserve to feel safe on our trails. Thank you.
Thank you. The rest of our speakers are in person. The next three are Elizabeth Rasmussen, Katie Reed, and Martha McPherson.
Hi. Okay, hi, I'm Elizabeth Rasmussen. I live in South Boulder. I moved to Boulder in 2021. And I'm speaking here with baby Noah and my husband Keegan about the South Boulder Rec Center and South Boulder in general. I'm an engineer by trade, and so I did a lot of math to try to come up with numbers for you guys. One of the things that was surprising that I know anecdotally is how many young families are in South Boulder. South Boulder has one of the lowest single-family housing costs. It's about $980,000 for a single-family home in South Boulder versus over $1 million in Central or North Boulder. Of that, over 33%, according to the Census ACS data, 33% of us are in households raising children. Households raising children have no time to come to these city council meetings, which is why babies, Noah's 11 months old, but I want him in 10 years to be able to be like the kids who are here, and it's very expensive to live in Boulder, so we both work, so finding time to come here is hard, so just take what I'm saying and think about it multiplied by all of our friends. Also, when it comes to South Boulder Rec Center, I know there's the argument for East Boulder Rec Center and North Boulder Rec Center, but stroller walking from Darley Avenue to East Boulder is just not an option, and we can bike him, which we have, but being close is huge, and that's a selling point. And we have friends that are now moving, instead of choosing the city of Boulder, they're going to Lafayette or Louisville because they have rec centers, and they're seen as more family friendly. And I think part of the cost and why we were willing to pay the surplus of Boulder is because of the infrastructure and how you guys prioritize that. But it's hard when you're come move, let's be neighbors, and it's just crumbling. So I think that's something to think about. And also we're the ones who are trying to have babies to put into the elementary schools for you guys. So kind of help us out here. And side note, in the last 3 seconds, the volleyball courts are rough and they have prickers.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. All right, now we have Katie Reed, Martha McPherson, and Sunny Vanderstar.
Hi, my name is Katie Reed, and this is my friend Kira Fling. We are juniors at Fairview High School, and we swim on the girls' swim and dive team. The girls' team at Fairview is an inclusive, no-cut sport where swimmers of all abilities can be part of the healthy athletic team with really supportive coaches. We have swimmers that are state champions and girls who join the team just to stay in shape for other sports and everything in between. It's one of the few sports that is truly inclusive at Fairview. The South Boulder Rec Center is our home pool and where we practice every day and host meets. From what I'm told, this has been the case for decades. Having the pool so close makes participating in swim team possible for anyone. Going to another pool further away would be very difficult for many girls because they don't have a license, or they don't have a car, or they just can't take the time to drive to and from another pool after school. I've heard from past swimmers that about 1/3 of the girls quit the team the year that the South Boulder Rec Center was closed and the practices were held at East. Having the pool at South Boulder Rec Center and being able to practice right after school is a huge reason why the team is so big and why we are so successful every year. We just got second place in the 5A state meet yesterday, and it's so special to be part of this team. Swim team, for me, has been one of the highlights of Fairview High School. It's social, competitive, and great for my physical and mental health. If the South Boulder Rec Center pool closes, joining the team will be impossible for many girls, and not only will those girls miss out on an experience, but the team will suffer too. I don't understand why keeping the pool that's been there for 50 years is such a big ask. Please make kids in Boulder a priority. Please keep the pool that Fairview High School uses daily from November through May to make our swim teams the best in Boulder. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Martha McPherson, Sunny Vanderstar, and James Duncan.
Hello, my name is Martha McPherson, and I'm here again, as you probably recognize me as the voice of outrage with our situation that continues to just devolve as far as the genocide and the silence and the lack of any real response to the catastrophe that just continues to grow. So I'd like to read a quick thing that I think is relevant to how I feel the situation is being treated by the City Council. I sort of feel like you're probably part of the Rachel Maddow, Heather Cox Richardson listening audience, and they share the same fatal political flaw. They never talk about the genocide in Gaza. It's a conscious decision on their part as not to alienate Zionists and thus grow their following as influencers among liberals. They probably also support the extermination of Palestinians because how can a seriously committed political person remain silent, neutral, or indifferent? Their silence is not an element of the fiddling while Rome burns phenomena. It's an element of betrayal, of complicity, of whitewashing, of running interference for Israel, the U.S. and all countries complicit in the genocide. They are only relevant to Zionism and serve its treacheries as handmaidens by soothing the consciences of Zionists who are assured their bloodthirsty support for genocide does not make them psychopaths. Truth matters, Maddow once said. It sure as hell does, even if she, Richardson, and the other crowd of progressive besides Palestine continue to flout it.
Your time is up. Your time is up. Okay. Now we go to Sunny Vanderstar, James Duncan, and Edward Connolly.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time and your service to our community here in Boulder. My name is Sunny Vanderstar, and I have been a resident of Boulder for 30 years. My first real job at 16 was as a lifeguard at my neighborhood pool. I remember sitting in the lifeguard's chair around 5 p.m., watching people walk through the gate with the residue of a hard day still lingering on their faces. They'd lay their towel in a chair, peel off their work clothes, and a smile of anticipation would spread across their face. There was a little skip in their step as they made their way to the pool's edge, and then they slipped into the water. In a moment, the day dissolved. Shoulders dropped, foreheads softened. They became weightless, ageless, and free. The pool was a place to unwind, to reflect, to heal, a place to connect with family and friends in an authentic, playful way. So I ask you, is the neighborhood pool a relic of the past, a nostalgic luxury, or is it a wise and essential framework for building a strong, resilient community? Today, the trend is consolidation. Large aquatic centers, packed lanes, regional meets, chasing Olympic records. But in a population increasingly struggling with anxiety and disconnection, is spectacle and individual glory what we most need? I speak for those of us with no Olympic aspirations. We simply want to swim and recreate with our neighbors in a place we can walk, bike, or bus to. A place without overwhelming noise and crowds. A place where kids can enjoy their childhood and seniors can enjoy their golden years. The Boulder I know and love values life lived on a human scale, at a pace our nervous systems can process. It understands the emotional and environmental wisdom of the 15-minute neighborhood. Please invest in a recreation center with a pool for South Boulder.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. Your time is up. Your time is up. Thank you. All right, now we'll go to James Duncan, Edward Connolly, and Catherine Miskin.
Good evening, Council. My name is James Duncan. Thanks for your service. I live here in Boulder, so you are my elected officials. While this building is getting new lighting I see outside, I want to shed some light on a few things. One is my country, our country, is issuing grave threats and is about to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran, which risks a major regional war among nuclear-armed countries. That threatens humanity everywhere. The rational protocol is to call on member states of the United Nations to settle disputes by peaceful means, negotiations, mediations, arbitrations, etc., without force or the threat of force. I urge you and everyone to make a statement encouraging a renewed commitment to diplomatic means to solve the problems. We are all part of humanity, and we have a responsibility to keep the peace. Also, I want to recognize and applaud the courageous and righteous heroine Francesca Albanese, who has been targeted for speaking truth by stating the obvious. Right? The international system has allowed a genocide to be committed in Gaza, which means most governments have provided it with political and economic coverage, and that the common enemy is the system that is allowing the genocide. So here's to Francesca Albanese. Please hold her in place. Power to the people and planet free
Your time is up.
Palestine.
Your time's up. Thanks for your testimony. Now we go to Edward Connolly, Catherine Miskin, and Michelle Rodriguez.
Good evening. My name is Ted Connolly. My family and I have been fortunate enough to be a part of the South Boulder Recreation Center community for over 25 years. And since we joined the rec center 25 years ago, the city has followed a clear pattern with two other rec centers. North Boulder Recreation Center was renovated roughly 30 years ago after it opened. Today, East Boulder Recreation Center is receiving a substantial investment at about the same point in its life cycle. Unfortunately, South Boulder Recreation Center has not followed that pattern. In 2015, the city stated that the South Boulder Recreation Center was nearing the end of its life. That was 11 years ago. Today, the facility is more than 50 years old and it has never received a substantial renovation. South Boulder Rec Center is not just a building. It's a cornerstone of the 50-minute neighborhood concept, centrally located in a residential community within walking distance of 7 schools. It is also a safe haven for Fairview High School in the event of a school shooting. The Fairview swim team practices there, and it serves families, seniors, students, and working adults every single day. My family is down there almost every day as well. Even when I'm not working, I will deliver dinner to my 16-year-old son, who is a lifeguard. Basically, I'm like Uber Eats and chat with Maddie at the front desk. In all honesty, I'm quite honored to have such a facility in our neighborhood. I feel very grateful for such a resource in the spirit of community. My request, please commit to investing in South Boulder Recreation Center and commit to preserving the core features of the pool, cardio, and gym. Thank you.
Thanks. Now we'll go to Catherine Miskin, Michelle Rodriguez, and Tenzia Bietzi. Is Catherine here? Looks Looks like probably not. So let's go to Michelle Rodriguez.
Hi guys, it's been a long time. I missed y'all. First, I wanted to say I missed the homeless memorial this year. I had a good reason. I wanted to follow up on that. We did have the trial for Zariah Hardy and the loss of life for that young soul in our community. There was a prosecution that garnered 96 years for the person that was convicted. But there were two people that are still amongst us running loose. They were identified by the judges and also by officers with confessions and evidence, but they're still free. So I want to push the city to look into that and follow up further on that as to why there weren't charges pressed for the boyfriend and the girl involved. Also, I'd like to say farewell to AMR Ambulance and rest in peace to Jesus, the young man that lost his life due to chemical sedation. I also wanted to say it kind of runs personal and deep for me. I know, I've had a few diagnoses in this last year, and they both related right back to my incidents. I've got now, because of chemical sedation and stuff, I've got 2 issues going on with my heart I was just told about in the last few weeks. AMR ambulance paramedics did that. I'm concerned for this new ambulance company coming in. I think they need to know that that's not okay. This chemical sedation of unnecessary proportions going on with our public. I need to follow up with you, and I'd like to.
Your time is up, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll go to Tenzi Abietsi, Jill Walter, and Evan Ravitz.
Hi. I'm speaking today to address concerns regarding equity and fairness as it relates to the South Boulder Rec Center. As a resident of South Boulder for 15 years, I've seen our community repeatedly being neglected. Parks and Rec have been aware of the decline of our facilities since 2015, yet no action has been taken. During the last council meeting, Mark Wallach suggested that we must compromise. Why are we being asked to accept less than what we currently have? Furthermore, it is not the responsibility of taxpayers to solicit funding from other residents for basic amenities. Projects such as the Flatirons Golf Course Restaurant, the Boulder Reservoir Restaurant, and the Civic Area were funded without requiring community-led fundraising. Why were these new projects allowed to take priority over maintaining existing buildings? While there are claims of declining revenue to justify caution in spending, the budget for East Rec increased from $13 to $53 million. We are now facing service cuts, scaled-back facilities, and difficult trade-offs across the board. If an energy upgrade is this expensive, maybe it's not the best use of our tax dollars. We are requesting the following: transparency on how funds are being spent, a commitment that South Boulder's facilities not be overlooked while others are expanded, and a commitment that some portion of the 2025 CCRS funding be diverted to South Boulder Rec. As a taxpayer who has consistently supported city funding, I am asking, when will South Boulder receive its fair share of investment? We have waited long enough for our community to be prioritized.
Your time is up, but thank you. All right, now we have Jill Walter, Evan Ravitz, and Leslie Glustrom.
Good evening. My name is Jill Walter, and I live in South Boulder. I have spent most of my life on the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, D.C., and I am used to paying high taxes. But I am also used to receiving strong public services in return. In D.C., my daughter attended full-day pre-K every day at our local public school at no cost. And in D.C., both the indoor and outdoor pools were free for D.C. residents. High taxes equaled services. Since moving to Boulder in 2021, my property taxes have increased significantly 3 times. In 2022, based on the 21 assessment, my property taxes rose 15%. I get it, we bought our house in 21, the assessment caught up to the market. In 24, my property taxes increased 23.7%. And now in 2026, my taxes increased another 7.8%. As I said, I'm used to high taxes. However, I am not used to paying more and getting less. Mesa Elementary will be closed at the end of the next school year, and now I'm facing the loss of my recreation center. I don't understand this pattern of paying more and getting less. I also don't understand why South Boulder has not seen the same level of investment as North and East. Buildings age, they require maintenance and reinvestment. In the past 4 years, I've had to replace my boiler, sewer pipes, appliances, and AC. I maintained my house because that's what responsible ownership requires. Why doesn't the city apply the same standard here to South Boulder Rec Center? South Boulder Rec Center is within spitting distance of the middle school and the high school. It gives kids a safe, structured place to go. It gives families, seniors, all residents a vital community space. Just because this facility was not adequately maintained in the past, that does not mean our community should lose it now. If we are going to continue paying more, we deserve to at least maintain, if not strengthen, the public resources that make Boulder a place that everyone wants to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Right now we have Evan Ravitz, Leslie Glustrom, and then Lynn Siegel online.
Evan Ravitz, 47-year resident. The threatened closure of the rec center shows a poorly run department and city. First, the fact that we voted for dedicated funds that can't be used for the rec center can be fixed by council by putting it on the ballot and asking us to fix the mistake. Please don't waste millions redoing Central Park again just a few years after the last redo. And don't waste more millions on changes at North Boulder Park that no one wants. Why did the Parks Department spend millions building new restaurants at the Reservoir and Golf Club a few years ago, just when many Boulder restaurants were going out of business? Why is council planning on spending $5 million to reduce Iris from 4 to 3 lanes, supposedly for us cyclists, most of whom prefer the far quieter and less polluted routes on Glenwood and Kalmia? On Baseline, it's worth at least trying what you're doing because there are no available parallel bike routes. Then there's the $7 million you wasted making the far North Boulder bike lanes more dangerous, and the $14 million you've spent sweeping the homeless back and forth from camp to camp. With only 140 unsheltered homeless, that's $100,000 each to fruitlessly try to chase them out of town, which has not worked for at least my 47 years here.
Thanks. So go to Leslie Glustrom and then Lynn Siegel.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. Really appreciate you listening to the public. My name is Leslie Glustrom. I do a lot of work on climate change. Been very concerned about bringing the carbon intensity of our electricity down. When I began, our electricity was over 90% fossil fuel, 60+% coal, 30+% natural gas. And now we're on track for Xcel's electricity to be about 90% renewable by the end of this decade. That's the work of hundreds and hundreds of people over a couple of decades. So I'm excited about that. But as we know, we can't really count on the power to stay on these days. And as they say, the time to fix your roof is when the sun is shining. So we managed to dodge this last outage, but it's been, about 2 years since the 2024 power shut off. It's been about 5 years since the Marshall Fire, about 13 years, give or take, since the flood. So we've had lots of warning. And what the handout I've given you is from New Orleans. It's a model that many of us look to. A couple of links at the top you can do, but hurricanes are their thing, as you undoubtedly know. And they began quite a few years ago saying, we can't count on the utility to keep the lights on. So they began to create a community plan around resilience hubs. They started with 3. I always think South Boulder, East Boulder, North Boulder. You know the story. Then they're on their way to 16 with a plan to go to 87. So this handout is just a quick introduction. As we think about our climate, I'm all about reducing emissions, but really the important thing now is to make sure that we have ways to keep the power on. You've heard the stories, you've had the emails. And as we think about our climate dollars, I think there's a place for this. Thank you.
Your time's up, but thank you. Our last speaker is Lynn Siegel online.
Sorry, I'm so patterned to 6 o'clock. This municipalization thing. I agree with the resilience hubs, but I have a different plan for the resilience hubs, and that's resilience within mini grids, reactive energy, and storage. And these like a city is like a microgrid, like a circuit. You can do direct energy in different places, and you can do it yourself. And yes, we have to own the power lines, Leslie, because we can't run current without owning the power lines. And look at all the things you've had tonight of people complaining that there's not enough money for this, not enough money for that. And now we're doing Sundance, which the economics impact advisor with the chamber says is like COVID or the Marshall Fire, an emergency opportunity. Oh my God, I don't think I like emergency opportunities like that. I think what we need is a solid way to take over a corporate entity, especially in these days of Trump and big, massive amounts of money. We can do this. We can do it ourselves with these microgrids, with transactive energy, with the resilience hubs that are embedded in a microgrid system that we have control of. Excel will never, ever do that because that's the cheapest way to do it. And that's the diversity, equity, inclusion way to do it, right? Because we have a real problem, of wealth disparity in Boulder. So let's do it. Let's do it.
Your time is up. Thank you. All right, that was our last speaker. So thanks everyone for coming out and speaking to us this evening. I want to particularly thank the young people who spoke so eloquently and the other kids who are out in the audience. Thanks so much for joining us and being part of your local democracy. And I will turn to city staff for any responses.
Thank you so much, Mayor. A couple of things. Sam, who spoke about the Voice and Sight program, know that I'll be following up with the team on those concerns and suggestions. To Michelle, I'm going to follow up with you directly. Leslie, I'll be sharing this information with our climate team as we work on Council's new priority for power resiliency. And I will say to the young people who are leaving that I am really proud to say that democracy seems to be alive and well in our future as we see how eloquently they come to a forum such as this. I want to appreciate all of those for coming to talk about South Boulder Rec Center with such love and passion. I'll say again, I know we've talked about this at a recent meeting. We as a city have not made any decisions yet about South Boulder Rec Center. We've in fact invested in the 2025 budget, thanks to council's approval, $2 million, which I hope you see as a sign that we do not think it's in imminent danger of failing right now.
but we are looking to see how we best serve community at this site. I shared with the public then, and I remind council that we will be coming to you very soon here to talk about our long-term financial strategy, how that fits into facilities. We have a couple of upcoming meetings. So March 12th, there will be a study session to update on that long-term financial strategy and the 2026 ballot measures. And then we will have another study session on April 9th, really about cities, facilities, and the financial landscape update. And we will be specifically also bringing conversation about rec centers at that time. So more conversations are coming up.
Thanks, Naria. Teresa, anything?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Any questions from council for city staff? Not seeing any questions. Any very brief responses to open comment? I got Tara and then Taisha. Oh, Taisha, was that a question? Okay, we'll go back to questions.
I wanted to follow up. Was it Michelle about the new ambulance people and the, what was it, chemical sedation? I just wanted to make a note on that. I didn't hear you. Can anybody speak to that, or can we get some more information?
Mm-hmm. I will say that I'll just start with operationally, we do have a new ambulance service provider as of the beginning of the year, and I'll perhaps defer to our city attorney to speak to that particular case, or not.
I can obviously disclose what's public. Which is an allegation of chemical sedation by our former provider. The city defended that lawsuit, and that lawsuit was dismissed.
Okay, thank you. And then I also just had a question about the voice and site tags. If in that investigation we're going to continue to do an online version, or if there's any considerations to going in person again as a part of a comment to that.
I am always candid to say when I don't know the response to a question, and I do not know, so I will get back to you, Councilmember.
No worries. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Great. We'll go to brief council responses if people have them. So, Tara?
Well, I want to make a shout out tonight to Raji, my granddaughter Shira's friend from the neighborhood. You were awesome tonight. What a great speech.
Yeah.
That's right. And I want to give a shout out to all the kids and all the teams who spoke tonight. It was truly amazing. You guys are great. This was definitely the highlight of my day, this part of right there. Thanks so much.
Very good. All right. Not seeing any other hand. Oh, there we go. Nicole?
Just wanted to echo the thanks to all of Matt and my fellow South Boulder people who are showing up to advocate. Really appreciate your passion, and I know that our Parks and Rec staff do as well. I know that they are so committed to our city, and we truly have some of the best staff people anywhere in the world, really. And I know that we're all going to be working together to try to figure out how we proceed. So thanks for coming, and thanks for engaging, and I hope you'll continue engaging as we enter the Fund Our Future conversations too.
Yes, we all understand how deeply important the South Boulder Rec Center is to the South Boulder community. All right, with that, thanks again, everyone, for coming to open comment. I'm going to gavel us into a recess, and we'll come back at 6:30 for the business portion of our meeting. So let's come on back in. I'll gavel us back into session. And we'll continue with the consent agenda, please.
Yes, sir. Our consent agenda is item number 3 on tonight's agenda, and it consists of items 3A and 3B.
Okay, any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Or perhaps a motion?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay.
Got a motion by Mark and a second by Matt. We will vote on that with a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll start the roll call for the consent agenda items 3A and 3B with Councilmember Wallach.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhard.
Yes.
And Spear.
Yes.
The consent agenda items are hereby approved unanimously.
Very good. If we can go to our first public hearing, please.
All right, thank you. Our public hearings are item number 5 on tonight's agenda. 5A is the consideration of the following items related to a petition for an annexation of approximately 24.04 acres of land located at 5399 Kewanee Drive and 5697 South Boulder Road, including 55th Street right-of-way. Our first item under consideration is the motion to adopt Resolution 1370, setting forth the findings of facts and conclusions regarding the annexation. Our second item is the consideration of a motion and second reading to adopt Ordinance 8734, which is annexing to the city of property the approximately 24.04 acres of land. And our last item is the consideration of a motion to change the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map designation.
That was a lot of words.
And I skipped some.
Thanks so much, Ms. E. With that, I'm going to send it over to staff. And Shannon, I will give you the mic.
Do we need any assistance?
Okay, thanks for bearing with me there. So I'm Shannon Moeller with the City of Boulder Planning Department, and I'll be taking you through the staff presentation tonight.
Would you like our clerk's team to help advance? If that's possible.
That may be good. I can't quite seem to get it.
I don't know if you all can put it up. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So tonight's proposal is to allow the property historically known as the Hogan Pancoast property to be annexed into city limits and with a Boulder Valley Comprehensive Land Use designation and a zoning consistent with the future land uses that are designated on this city-owned property. So we're going to take a look at the required processes, history of the site, some context, summary of the proposal, and some key issues. Next slide. So this proposal involves these two review processes, the BVCP land use map change, which can be considered concurrently with an annexation, and it's reviewed under the criteria in Appendix B of the BVCP. And the second review process is that annexation and initial zoning. It includes review of state statutes and BVCP policies and the zoning that should be applied. Next slide. So here you can see the recent history of the planning process to date. So as noted on the previous slide, these items were discussed at the planning board hearing on November 18th of last year. The board did recommend unanimous approval of the annexation, initial zoning, and also unanimous approval of the land use map change. The annexation and initial zoning first reading was approved on consent back in January at City Council. So tonight's hearing would result in a final decision on all of these items. Next slide. For public notification, site was posted and public notification provided per code. Some public comments were received, which included concerns about flooding and future development. The written public comments were included in the packet. And at the planning board hearing in November, one community member spoke to share an idea for a botanic garden on the property. Next slide. So looking at the property history, prior to city ownership of the property, there were multiple development applications that were considered throughout the 2000s and the 2010s. Most recently in 2017, public hearings were held on a request that was for an annexation, an initial zoning, and a concept plan that would have developed 117 units on the property. Planning board recommended denial of that application, and following a city council hearing, that application was withdrawn. Following that withdrawal, the city council held multiple discussions about the future of the property and ultimately moved forward with city purchase of the property. And City Council approved Ordinance 8349, and it established future uses on the property. Next slide. So as shown here, the ordinance established the property as being partially for Parks and Rec and flood mitigation uses on the western 19 acres that are shown in the blue, and partially for open space on the 3 acres east of 55th Street that's shown in the green. The property has been city-owned with these plan uses since 2019, but there's been no updates to the BVCP land use map and city boundaries to reflect these changes. Most recently, the city identified the East of Boulder Community Park as a potential location for meeting community parks and rec needs, and identified the adjacent Hogan Pancos property as an area of special opportunity. Annexation would allow for the property to be brought into city jurisdiction and under the city's purview for future land use reviews. Tonight's proposal doesn't include review or approval of any specific plans. It would just allow for future land use reviews to take place on the property. Next slide. So next we'll look more closely at the site in context and in the city's regulatory framework and a summary of what's proposed tonight. Next slide. So again, the site is just a little southwest of the East Boulder Community Center. It's bisected by 55th Street, and the proposal would include annexation of about 21 acres of city-owned property and about 2 acres of 55th Street right-of-way. Here you can see some photos. The site's been historically used for grazing and agricultural purposes. Next slide. The property is almost entirely surrounded by city annexed land. Here you can see some surrounding neighborhoods, Keewaydon Meadows to the west, Greenbelt Meadows to the south, Peacock Place under development to the southeast, and the community center to the northeast. Next slide. And here you can just see the floodplain map. The site contains some 100 and 500-year floodplain areas and some really small areas of conveyance and high hazard zones. Next slide. As part of this annexation process, a wetlands map is required to establish mapped wetlands regulatory boundaries for properties that are brought into city limits. Wetlands mapping and functional evaluations and an ecological report were prepared, and the wetlands mapping shown here would be adopted with the annexation ordinance if approved. Touching briefly on the ecological report that was prepared and included in the packet, the site was evaluated for the presence of and habitat for wildlife, including threatened and endangered species, The report concluded that the portion of the site west of 55th didn't include any areas of critical habitat and didn't find any evidence of threatened or endangered species. Higher quality habitat is present east of 55th, and that area will remain a designated open space area managed by OSMP. And the site was also examined for prairie dogs and found no prairie dogs currently living on the property. Next slide. So moving to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, here you can see the property is located in Area 2 of the BVCP, which is the area that's now under county jurisdiction where annexation to the city can be considered. Next slide. The underlying BVCP land use designation is low-density residential on the western portion of the property, reflecting the land use that was in place while the property was under private ownership, and it's designated open space acquired in the light green color on the eastern portion on the part of the property that's managed by OSMP. Next slide. So tonight's proposal includes the land use map change request for the part of the property that's west of 55th to change it from the low density residential in the yellow to the park, urban, and other land use in the green. This change is proposed to reflect the city's designation of this portion of the property for future flood mitigation and Parks and Rec purposes established by Ordinance 8349. Next slide. And here you can see the existing zoning in the area. The property is under Boulder County zoning right now in unincorporated Boulder County. Within the city, the property's near land zone public, shown in the purple, at the East Boulder Community Center, and it's adjacent to residential land to the west and south, shown in the yellow and the dark yellow colors. Next slide. So the proposal includes annexation and initial zoning district of public, shown in the purple, on the bulk of the site. The public zoning district allows a limited number of uses by right, such as open space and Parks and Rec purposes. Additionally, there's a small portion of 55th Street right-of-way that's proposed to be annexed south of the city-owned property. This right-of-way is proposed to be annexed to close the gap between areas of 55th to the north and the south, so that the entirety of 55th in this area would be within city limits. And this is for clarity and maintenance of permitting responsibilities in that right-of-way. A zoning district has to be applied to all land that's annexed, so this area is proposed to be zoned RL2, residential low 2, shown in the dark yellow, so it would be consistent with the properties to the south and the east. Next slide. So we'll just next move on to taking a quick look at the key issues. Next slide. So staff identified these key issues for discussion. Next slide. The first one is if the proposed annexation is consistent with state statutes and BVCP policies. Staff reviewed the annexation petition and map for compliance with state statutes, such as requirements for contiguity with city limits and other items, and found the application is consistent with the statutory annexation requirements. And staff also reviewed the proposal against BVCP policies and found it consistent with several policies, including those listed on this slide specific to annexation, comprehensive planning areas, and adapting to limits on physical expansion. Next slide. For key issue 2 is if the BVCP land use map change to park, urban, and other meets the applicable criteria. Again, this proposal is to update the land use map west of 55th from the low density residential designation shown in yellow to parks, urban, and other shown in green, which is described as public lands used for a variety of active and passive recreational purposes or uses and flood control purposes. Staff found the proposed land use map change consistent with the review criteria and the change consistent with several BVCP policies that support multi-purpose use of public lands, compatibility of adjacent land uses, urban open lands, floodplain management, and city parks and recreation. Next slide. And key issue 3 asks if the proposed initial zoning districts of public and residential low 2 are consistent with the zoning standards in 9218 of the Boulder Revised Code. The review of the zoning presumes approval of the land use map change we just talked about. The proposed public zoning, shown here in the purple, would apply to the bulk of the site. This allows for consistency with the zoning of the adjacent community park just to the north. It's consistent with the underlying BVCP land use designations and supports the goals and policies of the BVCP. And the proposal also includes that small area of RL2 zoning, shown in the dark yellow, for the portion of 55th south of the city-owned properties. This right-of-way is being annexed to close the gap along 55th Street to allow for clarity of maintenance and permitting responsibilities. The properties to the east and south of this area are currently zoned RL2, so this zoning allows for consistency with those adjacent properties. Next slide. So with that, staff recommends these three motions of approval for approving the proposed annexation, initial zoning, and the land use map change. And I'm happy to take any questions before I turn it over to Parks and Rec staff, who is serving as the applicant team for this application.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I appreciate it. Any questions for city staff? Not seeing any. Let's go to the applicant for their presentation.
Great, thank you. Can you bring the presentation up, please? Hi, I'm Tina Dalton, and I work for the City of Boulder Parks and Recreation Department.
And can you get more to the mic, please?
A little closer?
That's
Is
better. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your thoughtful consideration of annexation, land use, and initial zoning tonight. The Parks and Recreation Department is leading this effort with support and collaboration from OSMP and our flood and utilities departments. As depicted in this 1979 aerial photo, the land was primarily agricultural use, including a lighted rodeo arena, and it even depicts a tennis court on the adjacent private property. Next slide, please. As Shannon presented, our point tonight is really following through with the City Council purpose for the property. Annexation is the first step towards the goal of making parks and recreation uses possible. West of 55th Street, the primary user is going to be stormwater management and flood control utility. The secondary use is for parks and recreation. East of 55th will continue to be managed by open space and mountain parks. Next slide, please. This is an exciting and rare opportunity to expand parkland to meet community need. This diagram demonstrates the site's adjacency to existing park and open space land. You'll see the adjacency to the East Boulder Community Park on the north and other open space managed property to the east. Next. This is a demonstration of the years-long process that got us to this point today. As outlined in the 2022 Parks and Recreation Department Plan, more and more parkland will need to be developed to keep the same level of service that we have today. Given the city's purchase of this land and the intended purposes, annexation facilitates a special opportunity to meet community needs with the expansion of the East Boulder Community Park. Future development is dependent on the approval of the annexation, land use, and zoning discussed tonight. Next. Staff does understand the concerns regarding floodplains, wetlands, wildlife, threatened and endangered species, and vegetation. As shown in the ecological report in the packet that you have, these topics have been carefully studied. In addition, 2 engagement windows with community participation were hosted to better understand their concerns. BPR is concerned with the natural habitat as part of promoting health and well-being of our entire Boulder community. This will be a consideration in any future proposal. No development plans are being submitted as part of this process tonight. The process and questions tonight will be focused on annexation, land use, and zoning. Design development for a site review would be the next major steps if approved. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Thanks so much for that. Any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, appreciate your time. And we will go to the public hearing now. We have 6 people signed up to speak. Everyone will have 3 minutes. Most people are virtual, but we do have an in-person speaker. So our first 3 speakers are Donald Burgle and Lynn Siegel virtually, and then Catherine Sundvall in person.
Mayor, I did not see Donald online tonight.
Let's go to Lynn then.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I certainly approve this. You know, our need to control our open spaces and parks and recreation these days is getting very high. And it's been a long time coming here, and the flood ramifications I'm not entirely sure of regarding the CU South process, but I know that it can only improve anything regarding that development as far as managing Mother Nature, so to speak, geomorphologically. But yeah, it's been a long time coming, and yes, absolutely, we should have control of this land. And it amazes me looking at the imagery from 1979, and you know, I was bringing this up today at the Intergovernmental Affairs meeting, I think. We bought a new house on Harrison Court in Martin Acres in 1961. And we had a swimming pool right 3 blocks away at Table Mesa and Moorhead. It's now a condo. In the late 80s, it got turned into condos. So Parks and Recreation is really, really important, as you heard tonight from all the people talking about South Boulder Rec Center. And retaining these lands is really part of it. And creating a space in Boulder so that people actually want to come here, especially since you've got 10 years of obligation that I do not support, Sundance, do not, absolutely. And, you know, read my lips, as this proceeds, this is going to be a disaster for Boulder. So this extraneous, intense development is very consequential to the open space that we have, because people use this open space and it needs more and more maintenance and operations. And we don't have any money for that, just like we don't have money for South Boulder Rec Center. You need to plan ahead. And so, of course, I'm approving this project. And free Palestine and free Gaza, done.
Stay on the topic. All right, thank you. Now we'll go to Catherine Sundvall in person, and then Laura Gonzalez and Edward Spivak online.
Catherine Sundvall. I live at 5419 Illini Way.
Can you get into the mic a little more, please?
Okay. And that's in Greenbelt Meadows. And I'm a coordinator for a group that's putting together a proposal for a botanic garden based on the historic use of the area by the Cheyenne. So 200 years ago, the Cheyenne inhabited this area, and they had some sacred stories that have been passed down for the last 200 years and written down in various ways to describe the Preble jumping mouse and the leopard frog as sacred animals to them. So the proposed botanic garden would emphasize the Cheyenne story as the foundation of an interactive art exhibit at the Botanic Gardens. Funding for the project would come from the descendants of the Sand Creek soldiers, and they have committed $7.5 million to fund this project, $5 million to purchase the property from the city, so that there can be a private-public or public-private partnership, so that the various organizations like the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the Denver Botanic Gardens, the Denver Zoo, and the Butterfly Pavilion could participate in the private side of the combination of money from the private sector to fund the Botanic Gardens with the city in the public. And the best outcome for this would be use of the East Boulder Rec Center by the Cheyenne to have, for example, traditional dance classes in the aerobics room, storytelling and meditation in the yoga room, Cheyenne children.
Your time is up, but thank you for your testimony. Now we'll go online to Laura Gonzalez, Edward Spivak, and R. Batchelder.
Laura, your mic is open.
Laura, you need to unmute in order to speak. All right, why don't we come back to her at the end? So let's go to Edward Spivak.
Mayor, I do not see Edward online.
All right, R. Batchelder then.
I also do not see R. Batchelder online.
Okay, let's give Laura Gonzalez one more try. Laura, you can unmute and speak if you would like. All right, looks like that's not working, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thanks to the folks who spoke to us, and come to council for any comments about the applications in front of us. Do you want to start, Matt?
Let's start with a motion.
Go for it.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 1370, setting forth findings of fact and conclusions regarding the annexation of approximately 24.04 acres of land generally located at 5399 Kewanee Drive and 5697 South Boulder Road, and including 55th Street right-of-way to the city of Boulder.
Second.
Do you want to speak to that, Matt?
Good due diligence and finally making due on, I think, this property and best use of the land given the restrictions that were placed on it in 2019. So hopefully Parks goes forth and does righteous work.
Very good. Anything to add?
Just that I'm really excited about this project. When I was on the Parks and Rec board, we definitely had a dearth of tennis courts and pickleball courts, and so this is great news.
Good. Any other hands before we go to a vote? Not seeing any. A roll call, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll start the roll call for Resolution 1370 with Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Mayor Brockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Shuhart.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
And Wallach.
Let's make it unanimous. Yes.
Resolution 1370 is hereby adopted unanimously.
Continuing, I'll make a motion to adopt Ordinance 8734, annexing to the city of Boulder approximately 24.04 acres of land generally located at 5399 Kiwanee Drive and 5697 South Boulder Road, and including portions of 55th Street right-of-way with an initial zoning classifications of public P and 4, a portion of right-of-way and initial zoning classification of residential low 2 RL2 as described in Chapter 9-5 Modular Zone System BRC 1981, amending the zoning district map forming a part of said chapter to include the property in the above-mentioned zoning districts and setting forth related details.
Second.
Motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please, Alicia?
Yes, sir. We'll start the roll call for the adoption of Ordinance 8734 with Councilmember Adams,
Yes.
Benjamin,
Yes.
Mayor Brockett,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan,
Yes.
Marquis,
Yes.
Shuhard,
Ryan?
Okay,
It's a
thank you,
thumbs
sir.
up. That's a yes.
Spear,
Yes.
Wallach,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Weiner.
Yes.
Ordinance 8735 is hereby adopted unanimously.
All right. Charm. I make a motion to change the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan BVCP land use map designation on the 19-acre portion of the property west of 55th Street from low-density residential to park, urban, and other PK-U/O.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call, please, Alicia.
Yes, sir. We'll start the roll call for the modifications to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map with Councilmember Benjamin,
Yes.
Mayor Brockett, Councilmember Kaplan,
Yes.
Marquis,
Yes.
Shuhard,
Yes.
Spear,
Yes.
That work?
Wallach, Mayor Pro Tem Weiner,
Yes.
and Councilmember Adams.
Yes.
The change to the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan land use map designations are hereby approved unanimously.
All right, fantastic. Well, congratulations to the applicant, which is none other than our own fantastic Boulder Parks and Rec Department. I'll just say that I was on council in 2019 when we purchased this property for flood control and parks purposes, and I'm so glad to see that second part of it coming to fruition and looking forward to seeing these lands serve the recreation needs of our residents for decades to come. So thanks to the parks team for working on this. Looking forward to the next steps. And that brings us to the end of that item. So let's go to our next public hearing, please.
Yes, sir. Our second public hearing on tonight's agenda is item 5B. It is the consideration of a concept plan review and comment request for proposed development of the Boulder Storage site at 4880 and 4898 Pearl Street with 4 residential buildings containing 281 apartment units and a new 85,000 square foot commercial storage building. This is reviewed under case number LUR 2025-00035.
Thank you so much. Council may remember that you on November sought to call this up, and so here we are again with the item, and I will send it over to Chandler to get us started.
All right, thank you, Nuria. Good evening, City Council members. I'm Chandler Van Skok with Planning and Development Services, and tonight I will be presenting the concept review for 4880 Pearl Street. Just as a reminder, the purpose of concept review is to determine the general development plan for a particular site and to help identify key issues and provide feedback from planning board, council, staff, and the public in advance of a site review submittal. No formal action by council is being requested tonight on the project. In terms of public notification, written notice was sent to property owners within 600 feet of the site. Notice was also posted on the property. Staff has received 3 written comments from neighboring community members to date, which I believe were also all forwarded to council. In terms of location, the approximately 7.1 acre project site is located just east of Foothills Parkway on the south side of Pearl Street and west of 49th Street. The site currently contains a self-storage business with 2 large 1-story buildings on the northern portion of the site and approximately 32 1-story storage buildings dispersed across the remainder of the site. There are a few trees scattered along the boundary of the site, but otherwise the site is completely paved with no natural features. Adjacent uses are a mix of manufacturing, car sales, auto repair, catering, gyms, and other small businesses, as well as the city-owned Municipal Service Center, formerly known as the City Yards, adjacent to the site to the east. The southwest corner of Valmont Park sits across the Goose Creek Greenway, which runs along the northern property boundary. There are no existing residential uses within close proximity to the site, the nearest being north of Valmont and west of the railroad tracks in Boulder Junction. The BVCP, or Boulder Valley Comp Plan land use designation for the site, is general industrial. Per the 2020 BVCP, the general industrial land use designation is shown where industries are located or planned. Anticipated uses consist of more intensive manufacturing and may include outdoor storage or warehouses. The site is adjacent to community industrial and general industrial land use designations to the southeast and west, respectively, with the Goose Creek Greenway and Valmont City Park having a land use designation of park, urban, and other. Urban parks provided by the city include pocket parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, and city parks, as defined in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The land use designation for the area across the Goose Creek Greenway to the northwest is mixed-use industrial. Existing residential is located to the north of this MUI, or mixed-use industrial area. The project site is located within the boundaries of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, which identifies the future use of this area as general industrial. Adoption of the subcommunity plan resulted in a Boulder Valley Comp Plan land use map changes for approximately 250 acres that were previously designated as light industrial to mixed-use industrial and mixed-use transit-oriented development. These areas are identified in the subcommunity plan as areas of change and are intended to bring new opportunities for integrating residential, commercial, and retail spaces and places with existing subcommunity businesses and workplaces. The subject property is not located in an area of change. In describing the industrial land use areas outside areas of change, the subcommunity plan places strong emphasis on the value of land designated for general industrial use, and specifically calls out the mixed-use industrial land use designation to indicate priority areas for integrating residential uses into industrial neighborhoods, while preserving community, light, and general industrial designations for areas of the city that will continue to offer primarily industrial, manufacturing, flex, and supporting service uses. In terms of zoning, the subject property is zoned IG, or Industrial General, which is defined in the Land Use Code as general industrial areas where a wide range of light industrial uses, including research and development, manufacturing, service industrial uses, media production, storage, and other intensive employment uses are located. Residential uses and other complementary uses may be allowed in appropriate locations. Adjacent zoning includes Industrial Service 1, or IS1 to the west, IS2 to the south, IG to the east, and Public to the northeast, where Valmont Park is located. Residential uses are prohibited in the IS zones. The area to the northwest, Valmont Park West, is subject to the East Boulder Form-Based Code overlay, which was adopted for the areas of change identified in the subcommunity plan. So in terms of zoning, in the IG zone, dwelling units may be constructed only on a lot or parcel that meets one or more of the following requirements. One is residential use is consistent with the land use plan or map in an adopted subcommunity or area plan, or at least 1/6 of the perimeter of the lot or parcel proposed for development is contiguous with the residential use that includes one or more dwelling units, a residential zoning district, or a city or county-owned park or open space. This contiguity has to be established for each parcel or lot that is developed. This could be done by creating new contiguity within the same development proposal, provided that each IG or IM lot or parcel that is created and developed with residential uses under this code section can independently meet the contiguity requirement when constructed. In this location, for the purposes of establishing contiguity, city staff has determined that only Valmont Park is considered a city or county-owned park or open space. The northern channel of Goose Creek is primarily a stormwater and flood conveyance channel. While it is under city ownership, the Goose Creek Channel is not a designated park or open space per the 2022 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and staff therefore finds that it cannot be used to establish contiguity, although it does not affect contiguity to Valmont Park to the north, where this contiguity exists. This will be discussed in further detail in the following slides. So currently, the project site does not have 1/6 contiguity to Valmont Park or to any existing residential uses. The proposed project would redevelop the existing 7.1 acre site with an arrangement of 5 buildings containing 281 residential units and an 85,000 square foot commercial storage space. Because the site does not currently have 1/6 contiguity to Valmont Park, this would be accomplished via subdivision of the site into 3 lots and a phased development approach, wherein the first lot would establish contiguity with Valmont City Park. The second lot would establish contiguity with the first lot, and the third lot would establish contiguity with the second lot. The applicant has requested that construction of each phase be contingent upon building permit issuance for the previous phase, which would effectively allow for all three phases to be under construction prior to phase one residential units being completed. The residential buildings are organized around a central green spine, while the new storage building is along the western property line to provide a buffer to the northwest neighbor. The green spine runs north-south through the project, providing a residential open space and community gathering, as well as connecting the community to Valmont Park and the Goose Creek Greenway. Parking is at grade, and much of it is located inside an existing Excel easement. The open space is shown primarily along the proposed multi-use path and within two central plaza areas located between the residential buildings. The site plan depicts a swimming pool in the southern open space plaza and seating and other amenities along the multi-use path as well. These are just some architectural, oh, have the slides just not been going? Oh, my goodness, I'm so sorry. Been staring at my notes. I don't know why it's not moving anymore. It's moving on my screen. Anyone have tech support? Yeah, next slide, please. Oh wow, that must have been really confusing for you all. I'm sorry. There we go. Yes, I can. So, no. Okay. Yeah, this was the slide where I explained the phasing in the subdivision portion, establishing contiguity between the phases. Next slide, please. This is the slide where I described the project and the open space amenities. Next slide, please. These are architectural renderings provided by the applicant, which just show the general scale and size of the buildings. Next slide, please. Here's a massing model provided by the applicant showing the overall scale of the proposed development. The buildings are shown up to 4 stories and would require a height modification. The buildings with yellow and brown are the residential units, and the blue building is the new proposed storage building. Next slide, please. At the public hearing on October 28th, 2025, the planning board heard presentations by staff and the applicant and asked questions following each presentation. One nearby business owner spoke during the public comments portion of the hearing, expressing opposition to the project based on concerns over potential traffic and safety impacts and neighborhood compatibility issues. The 5 members of planning board in attendance discussed 3 key issues at the public hearing. One, is the proposed concept plan consistent with the BVCP land use map and on balance with the goals and policies of the BVCP, particularly those that address the built environment? 2, is the project generally consistent with the East Boulder subcommunity plan? And 3, did the board have any feedback on the proposed use and conceptual site plan? Next slide, please. Regarding key issue number 1, 3 board members felt that the proposal was not consistent generally with Boulder Valley Comp Plan policies. 2 board members felt that it might not be consistent, but also that the site was not an objectively unsuitable location for housing. Regarding key issue number 2, in general, the board agreed that the project does not appear to be consistent with the desired land use outside of areas of change designated in the East Boulder subcommunity plan. And regarding key issue number 3, the board agreed that the conditional residential use standards in IG zones are intended to provide incremental development on lots with 1/6 contiguity to existing, i.e. occupied or occupiable residential units, but did express a desire for more information on the potential impacts citywide of allowing the Goose Creek Greenway to count as city-owned park or open space for the purpose of establishing contiguity. Next slide, please. So I will be presenting the same 3 key issues tonight for your discussion, whether the concept plan is consistent with Boulder Valley Comp Plan land use map and goals and policies. Is the project generally consistent with the East Boulder subcommunity plan? And finally, does City Council have feedback on to the applicant on the proposed use and conceptual site plan? Next slide, please. So for key issue number 1, key takeaways from this discussion would be whether council finds that this project complies with Boulder Valley Comp Plan goals and policies that address the built environment, and whether there are any other BVCP goals or policies with which council finds the project either consistent or inconsistent. The following considerations, next slide, please. The following considerations should be taken into account in the discussion of key issue 1. The GI land use designation is the most intensive of the industrial designations in the BVCP and is the most limited in terms of the characteristics and anticipated uses. There are only a few locations in the city where this designation exists, the area and including and immediately surrounding the subject site, and then several large parcels along 63rd Street, which currently contain an XL power station, the Boulder County Recycling Center, and the Western Disposal Waste Management Facility. Policy 5.01 of the comp plan specifically calls out the East Boulder industrial area as being appropriate for revitalization efforts that support and enhance the area, minimize displacement of users, and reflect the unique characteristics and amenities of nearby neighborhoods. Next slide, please. In addition, Policy 2.21 of the BVCP includes policy direction for light industrial areas and supports housing and retail infill in appropriate locations, while emphasizing the need for analysis to guide appropriate places for housing infill within areas zoned industrial general that minimize the potential mutual impacts of residential and industrial uses in proximity to one another. Light industrial and mixed-use industrial land use designations are the only designations that mention residential uses in their definitions. Next slide, please. Because the site is not currently eligible for residential development under IG zoning standards, has a land use designation of general industrial, and is surrounded by manufacturing, light industrial, and service uses, with residential uses being prohibited in the IS1 and IS2 zoned areas to the south and west. The proposal to redevelop the site with 281 residential units is likely unable to demonstrate consistency with relevant BVCP goals and policies. Next slide, please. Key issue number 2 is whether the project is generally consistent with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. Next slide, please. In terms of how consistency with the Subcommunity Plan relates to the site review process, the site review criteria require that in addition to conformity with BVCP policies and land use designation, quote, if the project is subject to an adopted subcommunity or area plan or adopted design guidelines, the project is consistent with the applicable plans and guidelines, unquote. As previously mentioned, the site is designated as general industrial in the subcommunity plan and is not located within an area of change where community members supported a combined residential and industrial redevelopment. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, adoption of the subcommunity plan resulted in rezoning of nearly 250 acres of IG, IS1, and IS2 areas to mixed-use industrial, a zoning district intended to indicate priority areas for integrating residential units, residential uses into industrial neighborhoods, while preserving community light and general industrial designations for areas of the city that will continue to offer primarily industrial manufacturing flex and supporting service uses. Next slide, please. In terms of potential impacts of allowing residential on this site, the surrounding parcels, which have GI land use designation and IG zoning, and total about 12.5 acres, are either publicly owned, such as the Municipal Service Center, or currently ineligible for residential development. The proposed development would open 3 adjacent acres to residential. That's combined with this site, that's about 50% of the total IG area between Pearl Parkway and the Goose Creek Path. The potential impact is that approximately 16% of the total GI land area in the city could become eligible for residential development. Considering the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan policies and implementation measures related to housing in industrial areas, as well as the broader context of the area surrounding the site, staff finds that because most of the site is not currently eligible for residential development under IG zoning standards, is not within an EBSP area of change, sorry, that's East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, area of change, and is surrounded by manufacturing, light industrial, and service uses, that the proposal to redevelop the site with 281 residential units would likely be unable to demonstrate consistency with relevant East Boulder Subcommunity Plan goals and policies. Key issue number 3 does, next slide, please. Key issue number 3, does City Council have feedback for the applicant on the proposed use and conceptual site plan? Next slide, please. Considerations for this issue include that the intent of the conditional use standards is to allow for incremental residential development to occur on IG zone parcels with 1/6 contiguity to existing, i.e. occupied residential units or city-owned parks or open space. Only Valmont Park is considered a city or county-owned park or open space, and the site does not have 1/6 contiguity in its current form. The proposed phasing would create contiguity between Lot 1 and Valmont Park, but would not establish contiguity to a residential use for Lots 2 and 3 unless each phase was completed prior to commencement of the subsequent phases. Next slide, please. By allowing a site that is currently ineligible for residential development under IG zoning standards to develop a residential project in overlapping phases through the site review and subdivision process, the city may create a scenario where any parcel with any amount of existing contiguity is eligible for residential development simply and only because it is eligible for site review and able to be subdivided to create additional contiguity between lots. Staff's interpretation of the conditional use standards in section 963 is that a residential use that includes one or more dwelling units means an existing occupied or occupiable residential use. Therefore, staff finds that if council determines that a phased approach to residential development on the site is supportable through site review, at a minimum, issuing permits for construction of any buildings in phases 2 and 3 should be contingent upon first issuing a certificate of occupancy for one or more dwelling units in the previous phase. In terms of next steps, next slide, please. In terms of next steps, again, no formal action is requested by council tonight. This is just for feedback. Following the hearing, the applicant may either proceed with submitting development review applications or may submit a second concept review application. A site review application will require a public hearing and final decision by planning board, which will be subject to call up by city council. Next slide, please. And now I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandler. Questions for city staff? Rob, then Mark.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, it says, I'm curious about the contiguity with the 1/6 touching the parkland. I'm confused with this. It seems like there's a greenway, which is not park. There's Pearl Street, which is not park, and then Valmont Park is on the other side. Can you explain that?
Yes, the code basically exempts right-of-way from barring contiguity. So if there's a street in between a park and a parcel, it's still considered contiguous. So for the purposes of establishing contiguity, we determine that the greenway does not count as park or open space, but essentially as right-of-way. So it also does not block contiguity between the parcel and the park.
Okay. And then in theory, the first phase needs certificate of occupancy to do the next phase. Is that correct? To create that contiguity?
That's staff's interpretation of the code, yes.
Okay. Can that, I'm literally picturing I always get it wrong, Yahtzee, the game where you have the...
Tetris?
No, where it just keeps going and going. You just have to add on. Can you just keep adding on to that phase? Can you do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? I'm not saying this one is, but in theory. And can that just keep going because that one first phase touches?
Yes, essentially.
Okay. I'll let some other folks ask some questions. Thank you.
Do we have any inventory of how many existing small businesses would be displaced by this project if it goes through?
Well, they're proposing to essentially rebuild the storage facility, but now in a multi-story building. So the only businesses that are currently on the site are the existing storage units.
Okay.
So that wouldn't really be displaced. It would be moved.
And I was a little confused. I understand how phases 2 and 3 could theoretically establish contiguity, but I thought you had said that phase 1 does not, and therefore I assume that would apply to that would invalidate phases 2 and 3 if phase 1 cannot establish contiguity.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. What they're trying to do is essentially the first lot would be created in such a configuration and size that it would now have contiguity to Valmont Park.
But if they don't have contiguity, then phases 2 and 3 cannot proceed on that basis. They couldn't piggyback off of phase 1 because phase 1 lacks contiguity. Is that correct?
Well, so phase 1 would have contiguity because they would subdivide it to create a lot that had 1/6 contiguity to Valmont Park. They would then develop that with residential, and assuming the residential was completed and became an occupiable residential use, then phase 2 would have contiguity to that lot. So that would now be eligible for residential development. And then once that was developed with residential, phase 3 would have contiguity with phase two.
No, I understand how that works. I just, maybe I'm misreading the memo. I thought that phase one lacked contiguity.
Chandler's saying it, phase one does have contiguity.
Yeah, the existing lot does not have the required contiguity, but if they subdivided to create the phase one lot, that lot would have contiguity, which is what all they would need to establish.
I think we answered the question, Brad.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, Tara's done. I got Nicole and then Matt.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And we'll have a chance to ask the applicant some questions too,
Yes.
right? Okay, yep, then let me just, let me know if any of these are not staff questions. Thank you. So one of the questions I have is if, this project were to move forward, is there any way to structure later approval so that we're preserving flexibility around industrial use? So for example, could we require like a minimum amount of industrial floor area, have like a reversion clause so that if a residential use ever ceases, the first default would be to go back to industrial? Is that anything that ever happens or could be done?
I don't think so, because really if they meet the conditional use standards in 963, then they're allowed to build residential, and there's no kind of additional use requirements in the code.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
My question centers maybe around some legislative intent. I know that this East Boulder Subcommunity Plan was passed with some of us there. And there was certainly discussion about preserving some of our industrial spaces, but also having a park there, preventing that park from actually being adjacent to any housing was sort of self-defeating from a park. And so I'm kind of curious if you can reflect on what was the intent around having any of this around the park? Was there actual intent to at some point allow housing to be adjacent to this park?
Yes, and there is, the whole area to the east of the park was rezoned to MUI. The land use designation was changed to MUI, and the form-based code overlay was applied there. So I think the intent was definitely to have residential in the whole area north of Goose Creek and east of the park. But this area with the GI land use designation was not included in that, and they determined that it was to be kept as industrial.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, let's hear from the applicant now. Oh, sorry, Ms. Tutina.
Yeah, in this case, if the residential units were to be built, would their presence impact what types of future industrial uses could be used in the surrounding areas?
No, if it was still IG zoning, then any uses that would otherwise be allowed in IG zoning could still operate.
Okay, so they could have a factory that produced food that might smell, or lighting that's on all night, and yes. Those residents would not have any recourse to try to impact what's happening there.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the second thing is, so let's say all three phases of this, or let's say this project starts. How soon could their neighbors start transferring their land into residential? So that, because it would go up to 50% as an opportunity, would the first projects by this applicant need to be complete, or would other people could they start applying and building at the same time?
That's kind of one of the issues we're hoping that you all will weigh in on tonight, but the way that we're interpreting the code is that the residential units have to be established. So essentially they have to either be occupied or occupiable. There has to be a certificate of occupancy. Once that happens, then any adjacent property that has 1/6 contiguity is immediately eligible to start construction on residential uses.
Okay, so that would be true of any of this existing applicant's future buildings, or of any other applicant surrounding who also established contiguity.
Correct.
And then what's the process for subdividing the lot to get to the 1/6 contiguity? Continued contiguity, yeah.
So that kind of varies between different lots, but because this lot is of a size that requires site review, you can't subdivide without going through site review. So in this case, in order for them to subdivide, they also have to go through site review. But for a smaller lot that maybe didn't meet the site review threshold, they could just go through the subdivision process independent of any other development review process.
Okay, and are there cases where if the city puts a high value on developing this into residential, that we would try to accelerate some of these processes? Or is that not part of our process?
That's not really part of our process.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Tara's got one, and then I got Ryan.
I'm going to make it quick. Oh, sorry, Ryan, you want to go first? Ryan, you don't care? Okay, I think I finally understand this contiguity thing. So right now they have a parcel that is not a sixth contiguity. It's what, like a 12th? And so if they subdivide it, it'll become a sixth. Is that the workaround that they're trying to do? Or something like that?
I'm not sure on the exact fractions.
But you know what I mean.
But yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a workaround. Check.
Ryan.
Thank you. Hopefully mic's working. Yeah, great, thanks. Question about the multi-use path and the context there. It's almost always the case if you're moving along a multi-use path in Boulder that if there's some kind of a building you're going by, you're facing the back of it. There's a few exceptions. Rayback is one where there's actual parking there that's designed to approach from the path. I'm just wondering if staff's able to share anything more about discussion about the the unusual opportunity to have a commercial space facing a multi-use path like this. Either they came up with planning board, or does staff have any other, perspective on this as far as, just that this being a kind of an unusual opportunity and that there are things we had to do to really be thoughtful about?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely something that came up at planning board, and I think several board members also felt that, greenways are in effect open space and should be treated as such. Right now in the code, in the land use code, and in our other adopted policy documents, greenways are not considered parks or open space. They're generally considered more flood channels. They tend to be managed by utilities and engineering. So they do provide a transportation network, and I think everyone recognizes the value of them, but currently the way the code is written and the way our policy documents are written, they're not on the same, they're not considered in the same way that established parks are.
Okay, thanks. So I think I'm hearing there's not really a policy basis or a basis for staff to have an opinion on the desirability of integrating with the bike path, the commercial space with the bike path from the standpoint of transportation access or like transportation related access.
That's correct.
Super, thanks.
All right, I think that's it for council questions. Let's go to the applicant for a presentation, please.
There we go. Hey, I'm Pete Weber. I'm with Coburn. We have been working on this site for a couple of years now, trying to find a path. First, I just want to thank everybody, all of you, for calling this up. I think this is a complex enough project that it really required your input, so thanks for listening to us. I think that the fundamental question here, outside of all the lovely pieces of code that Chandler shared, is residential appropriate on this site? I think that's the fundamental question. If we can answer that question in the affirmative, I think there's paths to get there through the code. Next. So the first thing I wanted to point out is the residential industrial zones the idea has resulted in a number of code changes over the years, most recently in 2023, when more density was allowed, specifically in the IG zone. So we've been looking for more residential and industrial zones, and this is one of those opportunities. Of course, each project has to be judged on its own merits. Next. So our site, I think Chandler pointed out well the characteristics of the site. It is a self-storage facility. The red bar there shows the Excel power lines overhead that prevent any building in that area. And then you can see the adjacency to Goose Creek and Valmont Park. Next. So I want to talk a little bit about this neighborhood. It is a remarkably interesting part of Boulder. It does contain a lot of car service, as you can see in this photo here, but there's many other things going on there as well. Next. This is the Parkway restaurant. I've got a buddy who visits Boulder regularly, and he likes to meet for breakfast, and he wants to go to the Parkway. Met him there a couple months ago when we were, right after we had been seen by planning board, and I said, Dano, tell me about the Parkway. What is it about Parkway that you love so much? And he said, well, first of all, they've got great bacon and eggs. But then he said, this is where the people are. And he said, it's still a little bit weird. And that really struck me as an interesting set of comments about this neighborhood. Next. So there's many other things here as well. There's a gym right next to the parkway. Next. Liberty Puzzles is around the corner. Next. This is a new business. It's called High Steppin', I think is what it is. And I first thought it was like a line dancing kind of place. I don't think it is. I think it's hard ginger beer, which just speaks to the kind of entrepreneurial nature of this neighborhood. Remarkably interesting stuff. Next. There's a little coffee shop right across from our project on 49th Street. I think what they do is they roast their own coffee, and largely they deliver it by bikes. It's called Coffee Ride. Next. And then this is Front Range Cargo Bikes just across Goose Creek from our site. I'm hoping that the coffee place gets their bikes from these guys, although I'm not certain of that. Next. So this neighborhood is super interesting. It's vibrant, it's messy, it's super colorful and getting more and more so. Next. Roots Music Project just moved in here recently. A sort of grassroots music organization that again speaks to sort of the entrepreneurial nature of this neighborhood. Next. So there's this excitement happening here. These murals are all relatively new. There's just a ton of really interesting, vibrant energy. And it's messy. There's a dumpster. I noticed they painted the wall the same color as a dumpster. You know, they're trying to create something in this neighborhood. Next. And this is Vision Quest Brewery. I think this actually is a great kind of microcosm of what's happening in that neighborhood. If you haven't been there, Vision Quest is a lot like what it says it is. Like they have this vision for what beer might be like. And their beers are different every single time I go there, like almost their entire menu. And they have a big menu of beers. And they are really interesting. They're always trying something new. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're a little weird. Next. So there's all that energy, but this is our site. It's a bunch of storage containers. It adds nothing to this neighborhood except for the ability to store your stuff. Next. It's a parking lot on the corner, and you know, no one's riding their bike down Goose Creek to go drop off their stuff at the self-storage place. They're driving their cars over there. Next. And this is what it is. But you know, we do have stuff. People have stuff, and sometimes they can't fit it in their house or their apartment. They got to put it somewhere. Next. So our project does have a replacing the self-storage, as was mentioned, in the northwest corner. So essentially that use can stay. It's then surrounded by largely residential with a little bit of commercial that's right adjacent to Goose Creek. And then there's some lighted live work or some kind of maker space that we're trying to create along 49th Street. Next. This is first pass at some architecture. I don't think we're quite there yet, to be honest with you, but you can see an attempt to create something a little funky and interesting. Next. And then I'll walk you through the site. So the vehicular circulation is around the outside. Next. So that we can leave the interior for pedestrians. And what we're trying to do here is really connect the whole project back to Goose Creek, because Goose Creek is where we can move east and west and get east to the open space and west down to the center of town. Next. So there's a series of green spaces along that pedestrian connection, and I'm going to walk you through those one by one. Starting at the north side. Next. There's a little plaza that's between these L-shaped buildings. Next, and you can see some of the potential character of that here. Next. Then in the middle of the site is sort of like a mobility hub, a mini mobility hub where we can have some, that's where the street does come and kind of connect, so we can have cars in that area. And this is where the pedestrian beach kind of touches that, so car sharing, ride sharing can happen at that place. Next. And here's what that could look like. Next. And then a couple of other green spaces further south, a little spot for a pool, and then a kind of wide pedestrian corridor that connects up to the north. Next. And these slides just show the character of what those kind of spaces could be like. Next. Next. And then some precedents that we've been looking at for what the architecture might be like. Next. Trying to embrace some of that more industrial look. So what we heard at Planning Board, I think Chandler did a nice job of explaining what we heard. And there was sort of mixed support, but not universal. And the things that seemed to be catching up were the potential contiguity to Goose Creek, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but then also the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. So first I'm going to talk about the potential for a snowball effect. I think it was Claudia that brought this up. If you can go to the next one. The fear here was that by virtue of this project turning to residential, there could be the snowball effect where multiple other projects then have the contiguity they would need and they can turn into residential. So we tried to study that. Our project is in yellow there with our blue bar. And notice the zoning that's around us. I think Chandler mentioned that in the IS zones, residential is not allowed. So we don't have any concern about those turning to residential. And then the city property is in the purple there. So the only property that really could convert to residential if our project goes residential is the dark yellow, the 4 parcels that are in the middle there. So if ours were to turn residential, those could as well. I also point out that use review is required for residential and industrial zones. So if they chose to try to go after that, they're going to come back to planning board, and ultimately you would have the chance to take a look at that as well if you chose to. Next. The 1/6 contiguity, we would like you to consider, to give direction to staff ideally to consider Goose Creek as open space. That would allow a larger portion of our site to have contiguity, and it will allow us to do this project in essentially one phase. Next. So Goose Creek is this remarkable green space, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through our thoughts about it. It connects ultimately the green space at the wetland to the east and Boulder Creek all the way back towards the center of town. Next. And it is as Ryan pointed out, it is a fantastic multi-use corridor. It is a great thoroughfare to get to and from town. I actually ride this almost every single day coming to work, and it only takes me a little bit longer to ride my bike than it does to drive my car because I don't have to deal with stoplights. I get to go through all that on Goose Creek. Next. And then, city, Chandler's talked about how the city views this, but even their own maps color it the same color as Velmont Park. Next. So this is Goose Creek. I'm going to start at the west and move east. These photographs were taken last fall prior to planning board. So this is at the far western end. Next. And just trying to show the qualities of this space, regardless of who controls it and who maintains it. That looks like open space. Next. And this one, I didn't put this in there for you on purpose, Ryan, but this is one of the buildings that faces Goose Creek and treats Goose Creek like a main street, and its parking is on the back, and the front is on Goose Creek. It's a project we did several years ago, and we're proposing that this site we're talking about do the same thing. Next. And here's what it's like down by our site, and just a couple more. Next. This is the wetland that's kind of at the end of Goose Creek, and then ultimately next we run into Boulder Creek. So again, a pretty remarkable asset. Next. And then this piece of this quote here comes directly out of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, where it talks about the potential for Goose Creek to be something more even than it is today. I won't read through this, but it talks about how it could be a center of this neighborhood. Next. And then there is the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan itself. I think you could read the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan to support this project, and I think you could read it to discourage this project. And that's really why we're here, to get your opinions on where it falls. Next. The plan talks about, again, this is the piece of the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan that talks about Goose Creek. Next. This is the portion that talks about housing and encouraging housing in East Boulder. Next. And then this one has a particular quote that we think is important to understand. I'm going to read it on just the next slide. The plan represents the future vision for the subcommunity. It is not intended in the near term to prevent property owners and users from improving or using the property in a manner that is inconsistent with the underlying zoning. IG does allow residential as long as we go through a use review, which is the process that we're proposing to do. Next. So I'm going to hand it over to Justin Lunkin. He's from the ownership team. Just want to say a few more things and then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. I'm Justin Lujan with DBC Companies. We currently own the Pro Storage facility. A couple of things to point out, and appreciate your all's comments. currently this is our facility. We purchased this at the end of 2022, and we talked to the city prior to purchasing the property to kind of understand the East Boulder subcommunity plan, the new zoning code, obviously the demand for the need for additional housing in Boulder. It seemed obvious to us that this was not the highest and best use. As a proud owner of over 3 million square feet of commercial real estate, this is by far the ugliest project I've ever owned and hopefully will ever own in our history. So you guys talked a little bit about, displacing business. We currently own the storage facility. We have one employee on site. That's it. So when you talk about, displacing industrial uses, employees, there isn't a whole lot there. There's a ton of storage in Boulder, and we think this can be something much greater than what's currently there today. So I appreciate you guys calling this up. We, as current owners, truly appreciate you didn't have to do that. We, appreciate the time tonight, and I know it's getting late, so we'll try to make this quick. But a couple of points I want to hit on. One, Trammell Crow is going to be the developer. We'll sell the property to them. They're going to create 280 units of much needed residential in this community, right? You need housing for teachers, police, firefighters. Your median home price is $1 million. I mean, you guys need attainable housing in this city. As part of this development, Trammell is going to pay a $13 million cash in lieu contribution towards the Affordable Housing Fund. That is a huge win for affordable housing in the city. Currently, based on our current use, we pay about $184,000 in annual taxes. With the redevelopment that Trammell is going to do, those will increase to approximately $900,000 a year in just property tax alone, and then 1.6 million in sales and use taxes annually. So think about the benefit of schools, city, safety, police, fire again. And then Pete mentioned this, but we are not eliminating the industrial use here. We're creating a state-of-the-art 4-story storage facility. So we will literally replace every single unit that is on the property, but we're also going to give you additional housing units. I know everybody looks at this as industrial, and if you want this to be industrial, today to build a new industrial project, this would cost $400 a square foot. That is a huge number that does not pencil. If we were to try to develop an industrial project at $400 a foot, we would have to get $28 a square foot net rents. The absolute highest industrial rents in Boulder right now are, I'll say on average, about $14. The high water mark is $17. We would have to get essentially double that to justify penciling a true industrial project here. So,
and I'll just note, I believe you're a bit over your allotted time, so if you could maybe wrap up soon, please.
I'm sorry. Yep, absolutely. And then I guess just the last one, you talk about area change. We're not directly in an area of change. That doesn't mean we're specifically in an area of no change. So I hope you guys will consider that. Again, thank you very much for hearing us out, and hopefully you'll consider this. Thanks.
All right, thanks very much. Any questions for the applicant? Okay.
So I'm a blunt person, so I'm going to just be myself, if that's okay. Okay. So as a commercial real estate guy, that's what you are, right? Yes. When you change an area from very nominal, uninteresting storage space to residential, you're doing it because you want to make more money because it will be worth more. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's not exactly a Pollyanna type of situation, is it?
I would say, based on the need for housing in Boulder, it's a very positive for everybody.
Okay, that's fair if that's the kind of housing we want and where we want it, but that's, I'll say for comments. So isn't it true though that the price of land is going to go up once we start putting in residential over there?
You could speculate that, but.
No, you speculate it. Seriously, I don't mean it in a bad way.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that. And keep in mind, we're the current owner. We're not the developer.
I know. Okay, that's fair.
Nicole? Okay. Martina.
Thanks
for the presentation.
It's Nicole next.
When she was pointing, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just noting that there were other people down there. You mentioned that you would basically keep the amount of storage the same as what you have now. So I think 85,000 square feet is about what you have now for storage space there. Is that right?
We have, so keep in mind, we're talking about 7 acres that goes 4 stories up, and we have today roughly 900 units, so you'll make it more efficient, but when you go vertical, you'll roughly get the same number of units, correct?
Yep. So I think the packet said like 85,000 square feet is what the new one would. And my question is just, that's basically what you have now?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. So capacity isn't really changing. Okay. And then I was also wondering, so you, I apologize, I am not remembering your name, first speaker. So, you mentioned the hope that the people who live here would be people who work in the industrial area, creatives, makers. But then, Pete, you mentioned teachers, police, others of that nature working here. And I'm just wondering, what are you envisioning for who's going to live here? Because you mentioned the idea of live workspaces for creatives, but that's different from like teachers or other folks like that.
Well, there's enough room there for a lot of different types of people, and that would be actually my hope, that it is quite a eclectic mix, not unlike everything else that's happening in that neighborhood. So I don't think we get to dictate who lives there, but I think we, as an architect, I would be looking to design a place that would appeal to a lot of different types of people, but in this location, do something that's unique to this location, which I think is the funkiness and the imperfectness, the lack of preciousness, which when you're making things and you're doing those kinds of things, preciousness doesn't really work very well. That's maybe for other parts of town. So there's an opportunity here to do something that's different and sets this apart, and maybe that draws a type of person that might prefer that.
Thank you. And historically, right, the way that we live now with people living far away from the places that they work, this is very different from how cities have traditionally been historically, where they've integrated living and working spaces much better, especially for tradespeople, for creatives, before we started doing all the zoning and the suburbanization that separated them. And your concept really seems to lean into that tradition with the idea of these live-work units and maker spaces. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is sort of how much of this space is meant to be that space for creatives versus space for others who may be able to find, say, an apartment or home closer to the school that they teach at or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we have a firm answer for that yet. The plan that we submitted does have the yellow bar, which we call live work. The city's definition of live work is pretty problematic. And if you gave us some positive feedback, I think we would ask Chandler and staff to help us think about what this could be and what use category it might fit in, and whether or not there needs to be a new one, or because it's imperfect. We're not getting live work the way that it's defined because it's not a very good definition. So, but the dream would be that there are people living there and working there and ideally kind of making things in the same place.
Great,
and
thank you.
How we get there, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, Tina, Rob.
Other than the cash in lieu payment, is there going to be anything that is a restraint on rent prices?
No, I think we'll let Daniel answer that one.
So this will be market rate housing?
It'll be market rate housing, yes. I'm Daniel Pittenger with Trammell Crow Residential. We would be the developer on this project.
And did you say that Trammell Crow was going to buy the property from you? Did I hear that?
We would be intending to purchase the property, yes.
Okay.
From DPC.
Then I assume that there is a pro forma out there that indicates what those rentals are going to look like? And
Right now, there's just a dream. I mean, we're trying to find out if this site's even feasible. So we're probably best case scenario, if everything goes the way we hope, 2.5 years away from even starting construction. So right now, things are pretty in flux.
okay, so you're saying you have no idea what these things could rent for?
Oh gosh, I mean, I couldn't tell you what city municipal fees will be in 2 years. I mean, I could tell you what rents are in the submarket today, but yeah, we don't have, I mean, we don't even know if we can do residential at this project.
Okay, thank you very much.
Tina?
Yeah, I am just trying to, I have one clarification. It was mentioned that the area after this is developed that could also be developed through contiguity was in fact very small, but I had understood from staff that it was a bit larger, and I'm just trying to understand how much industrial we might lose to residential through the contiguity piece.
And I was going to ask this question as well. Can we bring that slide back up, Pete?
Sure, if we can.
Or staff?
And I should note that we did this late in the game, haven't had a chance to run this by Chandler, so he hasn't seen this yet, so I can try to explain my thoughts anyway. It's going to be forward about halfway through.
A little further.
It was earlier.
Right
there it is.
So, do you mind if I think the only thing missing from the map is the translucent gray parcels on the other side of 49th Street would also become eligible because they're not, because the right of way doesn't affect contiguity.
I agree, but I measured each one of those, and none of them meet the 1/6 requirement because of their perimeter and their long nature. So the northernmost one is very close, and we don't have a survey, so I was just measuring off the city's website. That one's very close.
Although if they use the technique that you're proposing with this property, they could do it.
Sorry, say that again?
So if they use the methodology that you all are proposing for this project, they could, like if they subdivided and then got the.
Yes, that's true.
And what is the dark purple? Why are those not eligible?
That is also zoned IG, but is city owned.
Okay, so because, well, the city wouldn't put residential there, but zoning wise they could, but just
Zoning
from an
wise,
owner
it could.
wise.
So if the
Okay.
city wanted to convert that to housing, they could. And then that could create its own cascade.
Thanks for clarifying. Tina, did that answer your question?
Yeah, so then it would just cascade up anywhere gray would ultimately be eligible just through cascading across, right? Or
Yeah, just to be clear, the area that is west of Belmont Park, that's also gray, on the north side of Goose Creek, that the land use has already been changed on that one. So that one, if folks wanted to rezone, they could actually rezone. Chandler and I just talked about this yesterday. Or it is IG, and it could be residential by virtue of its contiguity with Belmont Park. So we're just so assuming that that's already could happen. We just looked at the area south of Goose Creek.
okay, thanks.
I just want to make sure this is proper. Can I give like my opinion how this could work out? And this is what it's all about? Not yet. I'm gonna hold on.
All right, no more questions for the applicant. Thanks for your presentation and answers. So we will now go to the public hearing. We've got two people signed up to speak. Both of them will get 3 minutes. They are Lynn Siegel and Lara Gonzalez.
Yeah, Lynn. There's heard one guy say 280 residential. That's not correct. It's 218 to my understanding. Let's see. It sounds like a leapfrogging thing could be going on here. Like if they rezone that place across the other side of Goose Creek Parkway, then you connect it to Belmont Park, and then you can squeeze in this residential. And what is this residential for if we've got weather vane? The example the horrible of example of an islanded raw. I remember years ago this going through planning board, anchored on a brew pub. No grocery store in sight. You know, this is the same thing. I couldn't believe it. How did I miss this in planning board? I guess it somehow didn't go through there because I generally go to planning board. But this is really, I mean, Chandler, it seemed like Chandler was making the case for us to not accept this project, which is very interesting because generally staff is pushing these projects. So I'm kind of miffed. It seems that this is another way that we're just, you know, squeezing more residential when we can't do our South Boulder Rec Center. And this is on the topic, Aaron, it really is. You know, this is why Gaza is on the topic. Climate change is behind everything.
Please address the specific item in front of us.
And the specifics of this for climate change are more people. We do not need more people until we can manage the people that we have. We aren't managing them very well. They want their South Boulder Rec Center. And let's see. What's the form-based code wasn't discussed on this. I guess it's not at that point yet, but all we need in Boulder is more pogroms. You know, more Boulder junctions, you know, with no place to go. Because at least Boulder Junction can go to the grocery store nearby there. But, you know, we've got National Geographic. It's related, Aaron, because it's like this. It's stuck out there in the middle of nowhere with nothing to support the people. And, you know, yes, it might have a nice greenway going back and forth there. But a greenway is not a grocery store. And, you know, the loss of these businesses in this area that...
Time's up, but thank you for your testimony. Our final speaker is Laura Gonzalez.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I want to start with like the council members not laughing at the people that are coming here with paying our taxes so you guys can listen to us. Also, there's an echo. Can you fix that? I pay enough taxes for you guys to have good audio. Hello? Anyway, so please don't be laughing at your constituents that pay taxes and live here. It's very disrespectful. Your job is to listen to us. Your job is to listen to us, all of us that pay taxes, which brings me to the issue of development, $50 million. Please stop developing. Why don't we have Aaron Brockett disperse how many vacant offices you have? I want to know how each city council member, what property do you own? And if you make business out of it, I want to know how many are empty. And we need to pass a vacancy tax because we have an issue with the house. Why are we not
Please
building
address the
something
item
for
in front of us.
this is about this issue, Aaron. Like, please stop the ignorance. This is about this issue. This is about stopping development when we don't need more development. We have so many vacant stuff. Like you, Aaron, you own office buildings that are vacant. Why are our house still living in the streets? So I am demanding that every city council member discloses how much property you own and which one's empty.
To address this.
And warning of what? I'm talking about the development. Stop developing. We don't need more development. This is going to impact climate change. There's an ecocide going in Gaza that you continue paying for. This United States is an illegal settler colony just as Israel. And you guys continue to...
This public hearing item. Right, so that wraps up the public hearing. So that's going to bring us back to council. Chandler, can we get the key issues up on the screen, please? So keep in mind that we're not making a decision tonight. We're not voting on anything. Instead, we're getting feedback. We are giving feedback. So I'm going to ask us to speak to each key issue in turn. Keep in mind, not all of us have to say anything about each key issue. But we'll go one by one through those three and get council's comments for the applicant.
And is there a point where I could ask council members who were here during that process when they talked about general industrial, just to weigh in on what the intent was with that?
Sure.
Thanks.
Do you want to just ask that now?
I would like to probably ask you.
Do you mean about the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan?
Just to provide some more context about what the values were there and what the intentions were, why there was the contiguity loophole, but also why there was this industrial general use.
Well, I could take a first crack at that. So I think in the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan process, I think we talked a lot about the need to both have areas of change, so opportunities for redevelopment into denser housing, but also to preserve industrial in that part of town so as to not eliminate all of it. And so I think there was an attempt to strike a careful balance between the areas of change and areas that were not slated for change, and with the idea that we would still have a good quantity of industrial in this part of town for the future. The 1/6 contiguity thing, that those rules predate the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. They've been around for a long time. So I don't think we really tackled those as part of the subcommunity plan. Those just remain from before. Chandler, did I get anything wrong?
I believe so. We also have Kathleen King on the line. I don't know if Kathleen has anything to say. She was also heavily involved in the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan process.
I would certainly value Kathleen's insights and memories on this. And I could turn to other council members who are there too. Well, so after Kathleen.
Sure. Hi, Kathleen King, Principal City Planner. And I worked on the East Boulder project, which started, I think we started in 2019. And I think Aaron the mayor did a great job summarizing kind of the community work and feedback around wanting to be specific about preserving certain areas for industrial uses. And part of that discussion and conversation was a recognition that once industrial land is lost or displaced in communities, it's a really hard use to put back. So being really specific about identifying areas where we wanted to see industrial use and that type of use into the future, and areas where an evolution of more industrial areas that could include residential and commercial spaces would be supported, and that's where those areas of change are.
Thanks. And well, do any other council members want to weigh in on what they remember of that, Nicole?
Yeah, I won't add to what's already been said, but I will admit that when we were having this discussion, I never thought about a case like this where we would be basically preserving the industrial use that's there, right, in a kind of a way that then opens up the possibility of other things. So I would just add that this kind of project really, I had never envisioned that we might do something like this.
And then Tara.
Yep, I remember that Lauren, Councilmember Folkerts, and I were, I don't know if any of you were as concerned, but we were really worried about losing the industrial sections when the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan came up. That it was our one worry.
Did you follow up?
I was just going to ask also is when you were working with the different owners of industrial property out there, was there a hope to eventually be able to convert it into residential, or most people looking to maintain the industrial nature of the area?
I might look to Kathleen. We did a lot of outreach to property owners, but I couldn't summarize it myself. Kathleen, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think there was probably mix of concern and support. So a lot of the businesses that are in that area rent their space. And so there was concern about how that type of evolution would impact rents or the availability of their space. But yeah, I think with property owners, not business owners, a mix of support across the sub-community.
Nicole, you had something else?
Was just kind of following up on Tara's point, but some of those discussions we were having, particularly with former Councilmember Folkerts, was really around the creative space that was there and the artist space and the Mark, I remember you talking about the auto repair kinds of places, right? These were the kinds of places that we were talking about, the sort of smaller ones, less about the like a giant manufacturing facility or something, or
Great.
storage even.
So thanks for that, Tina. So I think that covers maybe some of the legislative intent around the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan as we experienced it. So I'm going to actually go back on what I said before. I'm going to ask us to consider key issues 1 and 2 at the same time. So key issue number 1 is the proposed concept plan consistent with the BVCP land use map and on balance with the goals and policies of the BVCP, particularly those that address the built environment? And then key issue number 2
is consistency with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan.
Is it consistent with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan? So maybe if people can target those remarks to those 2 areas for our first go round, who would like to get us started? Tara, and then Rob.
I mean, I can get us started just because I don't feel, well, I watched the planning board. I listened to the planning board twice. This once wasn't enough, so I decided I'd listen to the whole thing again. And I think it's not consistent with the BVCP because in the BVCP, we talk about saving our general industrial land use. And I really feel strongly about that. And I can't see, we were worried then that things were going to just fall. I know, like, I talk about unintended consequences, you all laugh, but I can't imagine that it's not going to happen because you just make more money on residential, and that's no fault of the owners or Coburn or anything. It's just the way it is and what we've always been worried about. So I don't think it is consistent in that way. And I appreciate staff's presentation as well, bringing that out. And for key issue 2, it is not an area of change. I know that I think it was the applicant might have said, well, it's not an area of change, but it is not an area of change. And we have a lot of areas of change. I know that we talked about maybe 4 years ago how that pharmaceutical company, remember, it's like it's going all night and there's lights and there's noise. And we do get letters right now complaining about that, by the way, that it's too noisy. And with every residential that gets too close to industrial, it's hard for the two to live together closely. And so I want to protect the people and I want to protect the industrial. And I want us to do what the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan asks us to do, and that is to find, what is the phrase that you use, thread the needle between industrial and residential, that they would live happily together. So,
Rob and then Mark.
I agree with what Tara said. It feels like that place, if there was some kind of change, it would integrate arts, trades, diversity of services so that we're not going out to other municipalities, and we do have that. And it just feels like it opens up the door to even more change, because if my notes are correct, 50% of industrial general is in that area, and if this happens, then 60% of all general industrial could become eligible. So it feels like there's maybe an unintended consequence with this project, but I'll wait for 3 for my feedback.
I recall some of these debates and conversations and our concern with preserving certainly light industrial. And I think it is simply an axiom that if you permit the residential to start, every adjoining property owner is going to want to take advantage of this. Every business who's a tenant is going to be opposed to this. And the issue for us is, do we want that to have that vibrant sort of light industrial neighborhood? I know for me, I don't really relish going to Fort Collins to get my shoes fixed. And that's kind of what you're looking at if you get rid of all of your light industrial. But if the economics are such that that is the choice presented to property owners, they will all choose residential because it is a much more profitable endeavor. And so we have to decide what our value is in terms of maintaining our light industrial neighborhoods and whether that's a benefit to the community. And in an environment where it's simply going to be another project of market rate rentals, I'm a little hard pressed to see that as the best outcome. So, thank you.
Nicole?
So the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan obviously represents years of community engagement, and I don't want to see a project that would undermine that work. At the same time, I see a lot of flexibility and creativity here. Live workspaces are something that I hear a lot of creatives and tradespeople interested in. It's really hard to be a local maker or start your own creative business when you can hardly afford rent for a room in a house, let alone rent on an industrial space. So that type of almost enhanced industrial use that attracts more builders, artists, and other creatives who need industrial space to make things into this area feels very consistent to me with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. Residential for the sake of residential doesn't seem to address these key issues. But in my opinion, to be consistent with the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan and the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, any housing would really need to enhance the industrial character here, while also delivering some of the ecological and livability benefits that we talk about in our comprehensive plan. And I do see potential for that in this concept. And just a side issue about the contiguity thing that we seem to be getting hung up here a little bit on that. In my opinion, I would like to see us consider our contiguity policy as a separate issue at some point, but I hesitate to let it stifle potentially creative uses on individual properties.
I can call on myself and go next. Nicole, that was well said, I thought. Because I thought staff's analysis about whether it complied with the BVCP and the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan was well done. I think in particular with the Subcommunity Plan that this is not what we were envisioning for this part of town. So we did pick some really large swaths of East Boulder for areas of dramatic change and with really large zoning changes in those, including points just a little bit to the north in that Valmont Park West section. And did not designate this for that kind of large-scale change, but I do see this proposal as being a pretty large-scale change. So I don't think it does strike that balance in terms of the preservation of industrial versus areas of change. That being said, that storage area, like you said, not in great shape and not the highest and best use of that property. So I would certainly be interested in some kind of a proposal that did something interesting here, and which is where I think Nicole said some good and positive things. Like I think about another Coburn project, Steel Yards, that has some really interesting combinations of residential and light industrial spaces in there in terms of live, work, and other things like that. So to your point there is, okay, it wasn't designated an area of change. Is it an area of no change? Well, no, there's some change that could be contemplated here. But I think it would need to be something that kind of was more deeply integrated into that industrial character of what's there right now. I also do think that the attempt to do the simultaneous subdivision and develop the whole parcel, all three parcels all at once, is not really what's contemplated by our code. So I think that kind of an approach I don't think is probably going to be an appropriate one. So I would consider you all to think about something pretty different for this site. I think there is something interesting that you could do, but I think it would need to respect the intent to still have more industrial uses in that area. Matt?
For one, I actually really like the comments that I've already heard. You know, this project coming at the very front end of redeveloping East Boulder Subcommunity Plan, I think the timing of this maybe changes. If we had already built out everything else and all the residential had been gobbled up in the way that it maybe would, and we've maxed, and then this project came along, I might have a different assessment of it because we've seen how that's evaluated. But given this would be first out the gate, I think there's maybe some reticence of the commitment to housing here in this instance. So I think the timing is a little off given where we are in the East Boulder Subcommunity Plan. I'm leaning towards some of Aaron's comments on this. I think if you were to lean more into the industrial, which the presentation did a great job of talking about the funkiness of it, and I think leaning into that and pulling back on the intensity of the residential and leaning more into the industrial, more into the work. I think more on balance of those two things might, I think, conceptually blend in that community, I think, a little bit more, especially given that it's the first out the gate. And I think that might be what's working against you is it would be brand new. It's the first out the gate. That rest of the area hasn't really been developed in the larger vision, and it might be evaluated a little differently if there's a lot more housing in that area. So I think there's a timing challenge that's there. So I think on balance of industrial to residential could use a little bit of retweaking to kind of fit with where that concept resides. I did just do a 6-7 for all of those watching. Hopefully none of the teenagers are actually watching.
Anybody else on this one? I'm just seeing if anybody else wants to give input on issues 1 and 2. And I'm not seeing any other hands. Oh, there we go. Taisha.
And I think I'm the only one who haven't spoke, but I don't think there's much more that needs to be said. I really concur with my colleagues on this. There is so little light industrial, and I agree with Mark's comments around as soon as residential starts to build, noise, sound, smell will continue to be an issue that will be prioritized and potentially push this out. Although, again, I do love the idea of the live work, and it did look like there was a little sliver of that. I think that there's an opportunity. I'm also curious, how does that dovetail to the work that's happening with BMOCA moving and some of the artwork that, artists, residential housing there, and then of course Sundance. I think there's definitely some light industrial opportunities. And in addition to that, as our city is working hard to keep our federal labs and the work that we do in science and tech, I think it's in our best interest to continue to preserve our light industrial as an opportunity to diversify the types of businesses and the types of work. And I know right now we're saying things like, well, residential's more, you can make more money. That's today. But I don't know if that's going to be the case 10, 15 years down the line. Actually, light industrial might make a comeback. Who knows? But the trajectory for residential is not looking great like right now for a variety of different reasons. And I think it's in our best interest to keep this property as an asset. Thank you. As an irreplaceable asset. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Can we get key issue number 3 up on the screen then, please? Next slide. Does City Council have feedback for the applicant on the proposed use and conceptual site plan beyond what we've already given? Rob.
Thanks. I liked when you showed all the neighborhoods and the funkiness of Gateway and some of those really cool places there. I know that area intimately, and I really think it gives Boulder a lot of character. If you could integrate that into yours, that would make me personally a little more apt to look at it favorably. But specifically, when I look at your numbers, out of the 281 units, 8 are live work, 52 are studios, and 121 are 1-bedrooms. Those aren't going to capture firefighters and police and staff. It's a different kind of housing that we're really looking for. So if you could flip those numbers, and if the majority was like 70% live work, where people could actually work, and you could have ventilation systems, and you could do art, and create exactly what you showed us in the area that the residents could go to. If you created that and the residents could live there, I would be much more excited about the project.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what my colleagues are saying, and I also agree that the storage unit lot use is not a great use of space, and could see changing that somehow. The other thing I hope that we do as a council is really think about this 1/6 contiguity rule, because it's an interesting message where we have a way for property owners in the area to go to residential, but in this case, it sort of works and it kind of doesn't, and then we don't really want residential. So I think if we are going to have these mechanisms, we need to support that use as well, or get more clarity. And maybe we can do this through this comp plan process. So it's just, it's a little, it's interesting that it's like we haven't exactly made up our minds. I guess in some ways we're giving that feedback now, but I hope that we can clean that up so we're not sending mixed messages to people who are purchasing properties and wondering if they're going to meet this 1/6 contiguity criteria. And if they did, they could just do residential, but if they don't, we have to really talk about it. And so I'd love to get clarity on that. But I agree, particularly with what Aaron had to say. And but I have some concerns about changing the fundamental core of the feel of this neighborhood, and especially when you talk about things like Liberty Puzzles, which are a brand, a Boulder brand, a Vision Quest, and they are here because of the space that was provided to them, and I don't want to lose that kind of new business.
Nicole and Tara.
Yeah, I just had a couple more things. I just want to say thank you for bringing kind of a really creative idea here. I love the idea of consolidating storage use this way, and truly never envisioned the idea that we might be able to consolidate and then do more. But for me, as I mentioned before, the more really does need to be about enhancing the industrial nature of this area. That's really critical to me to be aligned with what our community worked really hard to plan for this area. And also just kind of a side comment, I'm not opposed to thinking about Goose Creek as open space. It already feels that way to me whenever I'm walking or riding in that area. So just wanted to note that.
I actually want to apologize to the applicant and the developer. Hello, people. I'm apologizing to you. I was too blunt, and I feel bad about that. But I do want to say that that's what happens when you're from New York. I don't know what to tell you. But I do appreciate what Nicole said, and actually what all my colleagues said. And I hope that together, everything that we've said as a body, meshes for you and gives you some sort of a vision going forward. And so I hope you accept my apology for being too blunt.
Ryan.
Thanks. I just have one or two small comments. First, to also say thanks to the applicants for coming in here and trying something new and bold. I think if and when you reimagine some of the ideas that my council colleagues have said to think about, you come back, I really do think it would be exciting to see the north-facing aspect that is facing the multi-use path to be more integrated and more of an open front to the access for multi-use users, people who are walking, people in wheelchairs, bicycles, and so on. I think if you think out 10, 20 or more years, there's the potential for this path to have a lot more users, and we just have so little. I mean, pretty much zero that I can think of commercial space, like civic-oriented commercial space that's facing multi-use paths, and so. That's my main comment. Is I just think if you come back, I'd love to see even a little more focus on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any other last thoughts from council before we wrap up? Well, I'll add my, seeing none, I'll add my thanks to the applicant for bringing this to us and allowing us the chance to talk it over, and give you a chance if you had any clarifying questions that you wanted to ask of us before we finish up.
There it goes. I don't think we have anything else. Thanks. I think your input was pretty clear, and appreciate you, again, calling this up, and hearing from you was really useful. Thanks.
I'm glad to hear it. All right, thanks. Okay, and that brings us to the end of that item, and also brings us to the end of our agenda for the evening. So unless anybody has any final words, I will go ahead and gavel us closed here at 8:29 p.m. 21 minutes early.